Get some vitamin D outside and sometimes.
Say we call William Alexander, and Your Honor, if I can have prosecution laptop, please. Good afternoon, sir. What's your name?
William Alexander.
Normal spelling on Alexander?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you employed, sir?
I am, sir.
How are you employed?
I'm employed with the Chattanooga Police Department.
In what capacity?
I'm a field training officer.
Do you also work in a patrol capacity as an
Yes,
FTL?
yes.
Okay. Were you working in a patrol capacity on November 25th of 2023?
Correct.
Okay. On that day, did you respond to a fatal wreck on Frazier Avenue?
I do.
And on that date, were you asked to accompany Randy Vega to the hospital?
Correct.
Okay. As part of your duties, are you issued a body camera?
I am.
Were you wearing that body camera on that date?
Yes, sir.
To your knowledge, was it active and recording?
Yes, sir.
Having you not ask me what it is?
It's my body camera footage from that day.
Have you reviewed it before today?
I have.
And does it fairly and accurately picture actions on scene?
Yes.
I would do this and evidence at this point.
Exhibit 66.
All right, and I'm going to publish, sir, a short section for the record. It's going to be 15:58:47 through 16:01:06, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about it, okay? If you would turn around for me. Where are you at right now?
I'm in the back of the ambulance.
Okay, who's there with you?
An EMS worker and Megan.
Okay. Do you see anything on the countertop behind the EMS worker of note?
Yeah, it's Mr. Lee's wallet.
Throughout your ride, did you observe anybody, including yourself, tamper with that wallet? I have paused the video and jumped back to 15:58:57. I've got that encircled. Is that the wallet we've been discussing?
That is.
Okay. Continuing to publish, sir, this time from 16:03:11 through 16:05:01. You were just handed an item. What is that?
It is Mr. Vegas' wallet.
All right. What are you doing with it?
I'm going through it to find some form of identification for Mr. Vega.
Were you successful in locating identification for Mr. Vega?
I was, I found his background, I his identification.
I'm going to show you two pictures now so you can recognize what's in here.
Yeah, I took a picture of his social security card and his identification located in his wallet.
These pictures accurately depict what's found in his wallet.
It does.
This one I moved from evidence, I think 67 and 68.
Sir.
That's his driver's license. Sir,
Yes, yes, sir.
is this a social security card you found?
Yes, sir.
Those are my questions.
No questions, Your Honor.
Thank you also.
State calls Thomas Satterfield. Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
What's your name?
Thomas Satterfield.
Please spell your last name for me.
Satterfield.
Mr. Satterfield, are you employed?
No, sir. I'm a student,
Okay, what kind of student?
medical student.
And in November, have you always been a medical student or did you work prior to that?
Worked prior to that.
In November 2023, how were you employed?
I was a patient care tech in the emergency department at Orlando.
Is that here in Chattanooga, Tennessee?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is a patient care technician?
We were kind of just the extra hands for the department, doing all the stalking, all the kind of base work, I guess, for the department, helping change patients, get patients into the department and settle all that sort of thing.
How long did you hold that job?
About 2 years.
Why did you do it?
I wanted to kind of experience the medical field. Most of my experience before that has been in like pediatric settings, so wanted to be somewhere to learn more, experience more, and it seemed like a great place to do that and get involved and hopefully help people along the way.
Were you required to have any sort of education or training to hold that role?
We were required to have like in-house training, but not any degrees, but I did have a biomedical engineering degree prior to that role.
I'd like to direct your attention to the date of November 25th of 2023. Were you working on that date?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember that date?
Yes, sir.
Why?
It was, I guess, after the incident, we're all here for an emotional day, and a day that definitely just hit a little harder than most of them do.
I'd like to back up. So you said you worked in the emergency department.
Yes, sir.
When a trauma patient comes into the emergency department, what is your job specifically? What are you there to do?
Yes, sir. So we start at kind of the head of the bed with the physician, and when the patient's rolled in, we help transfer the patient from the EMS stretcher onto our hospital stretcher, getting them hooked up like all the vital machines for heart rate, blood pressure, all those things. Roll the patient if we have to expose clothing, make sure all the injuries are exposed. And then from there, we just kind of float and help out. If the doctor or nurse needs anything, needs to get rid of something, go grab something, and then we're responsible for getting like the blood work from bedside to the actual lab.
You talked about blood work, so I want to ask some questions about that, sir. As part of a trauma patient's care, in your experience, would a doctor typically order that blood be drawn?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Pretty much always.
as a matter of routine?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that process. When and how does that occur?
So when a patient's first brought in, he's kept like a trauma patient. It's only a kind of crowded bed, so everyone has their roles, and either the respiratory therapist or the nurse, one of the nurses will draw blood from the patient. And then if the texts are ready and like the orders are ready to be printed and placed on the label, we go ahead and take the blood right then and there. If not, it might sit with the nurse at the bedside for a minute before we're ready to label it or print out the labels, label the blood, and get it back to the lab.
On November 25th of 2023, were you involved in the care of a patient named Randy Vega?
Yes, sir.
From the beginning, what do you remember about your involvement with Mr. Vega's care?
It was, again, like a pretty busy time in the ER with the whole accident going on. So I was there when Mr. Vega was brought into the department, to the trauma bay, and did pretty much the role I just said of getting him over things, helping get things attached. And then took the blood and delivered that, and then was just kind of responsible for checking in the rest of the time he was with us in the department.
I'm going to show you a picture and ask if you recognize what's in it.
Yes, sir. That is the trauma bay where Mr. Vega was brought in, and I'm standing in the foreground holding a bag with like blood vials.
Does that photograph accurately depict you as you appeared on November 25th, 2023?
Yes, sir.
That's when I put aside the evidence that states Exhibit 69.
Sir.
What's in your hand, sir?
That is the bag that we use to put all the blood vials in, and then that's what we transport them to the lab in.
Whose blood is that specifically?
Mr. Vega, the patient in the picture.
Was that blood drawn in your presence?
Yes, sir.
Did you notice anybody tamper with it in any way, shape, or form?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you got that bag, what did you do with it?
I went kind of, I guess, behind where the picture was taken from, kind of looked out of that room to our chain of computers where we have our printers, and I would have printed the labels there, and then I took the labels and I put them on each of the individual blood vials, and then take the bag to the lab, which is outside our department.
Why are there so many tubes of blood in that bag?
Especially for like a trauma patient, they go ahead and pull each of the different vials is for a different purpose. So they go ahead and pull all the blood that we might need, and then the doctors are able to put in orders afterwards for either all of it or the specific vials that they want to test.
I'm going to approach and show you two pictures, sir.
Yes, sir.
What are these?
These are the lab vials that we use in such scenario with the patient label or the labels that I said I printed off already applied. And it says Randy Vega on them, and then the domain that is used when the patient's brought in.
I want to come back to that, but my question here is, are these pictures accurately depict the tubes that you labeled on that bag?
Yes, sir.
Are those the tubes of blood that were drawn in your presence?
Yes, sir.
At this point, Your Honor, I'd ask these be within evidence 7871.
Those two separate files. Picture.
You said something about an alpha domain.
Yes, sir.
What's that?
So if a patient is brought in, and again, generally in a trauma, and they're not able to confirm their identity in the moment, or if we're kind of getting set up before the patient's there, we'll go to the name so that we can go ahead and start treatment, and then it's merged with the patient identity once that's confirmed.
And so the labels that you apply to the blood tubes, do they contain the patient's identity information?
Yes, sir. With so the other one has the names on those.
So in this particular case, what name is present?
The Brown Alpha November, and also Randy Vega.
Is there any other biographical information there?
I think it's the birthday on the Middle Road, I guess. And then the time, the date and time that it was printed.
What date and time was this label printed?
November 25th, 2023 at 4:17.
Your Honor. Okay.
For the record, no objection, Your Honor. I realize I nodded my head and didn't say it out loud.
And for the record, I am flipping to page 105. I'm going to point to an area. You see this field that says collected by?
Yes, sir.
There's a number below that. Can you read that aloud for me, please?
20858.
What's that number?
That is the, it's called the lab identification number for myself, so they can identify who logged in.
Apart from, and I want to be clear, after you labeled the blood, what did you do with it?
So as soon as it's labeled, it's ready to go, and I took it out right out back to the department, down the hall to the lab.
Okay. Apart from dealing with Mr. Vega's blood, what, if anything else, did you do during his care?
So again, since it was like a trauma patient, he got, I think, some like scans afterwards, after he was initially brought in. So when he was brought back and needed to be more stable, I just kind of went around through the area that was in that picture and check on the patients in that area. So I just checked on him while he was still with us.
Did you check? So you checked on Mr. Vega specifically?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember anything about that experience?
The thing that I think sticks out like most in my mind from most of the day is one of the times I came through and he was like pretty pleasant, like kind of laughing and again, like a pleasant demeanor, but it didn't seem to reflect like the understanding that something so bad had just happened.
Thank you, sir. Ask the witness, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Satterfield.
Good afternoon.
I got a little confused. Did you actually draw the blood or just witness the blood draw?
No, ma'am, just witness.
Do you know who drew the blood?
I do not. It was, again, in those situations, normally either the respiratory therapist or one of the nurses at the bedside that pulled it out and either hand the tube directly to us or bag it and hand it back to us.
Okay. Do you know what she cleaned Mr. Vega's arm with when the blood was drawn?
Normally, for trauma patients, it's a chloroprep. I don't know what else in there, to be honest.
Alcohol? An alcohol swab?
Probably.
Probably, but you're not
I know
completely
that,
sure that
yes,
day.
ma'am.
That's
I'm
just
not.
usually what you see.
It's, yes, it's normally called chloroprep.
So because you're not sure who actually drew the blood, you're not sure whether it was a nurse or a phlebotomist or
It's
tech.
normally, it's a nurse or the respiratory therapist.
do you have any training in forensic blood draws?
No, ma'am.
What was the blood drawn for in this instance?
Kind of for like the initial reasoning of when it's a trauma patient, they just go ahead and pull a variety of the labs so that it's all available. And then once the doctors have had a moment to assess the situation, they can put them in specific orders or they can just put in a blanket order for the trauma lab.
Okay, so at the time this was drawn, you don't necessarily know what tests were going to be run on it?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
What happens to the blood after you draw it?
Again, it's in those vials.
Right.
We just label them with the stickers once those orders are put in, and then walk it directly back to the lab, and then we just drop it off for the lab tech. We hand it to them.
Okay, and then you're not sure what happens after the lab techs take it, right? You don't
Correct.
watch it, you don't babysit it, you
Correct.
don't verify where they put it or what they do with it?
Correct.
Okay. So you noted that you had a couple different tubes of blood and they each have a different color top, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And why is that?
those designate which tests which tests are capable, I guess, of being ran on those.
Sure. So a different color. Let me see if I'm getting this correct, just for their
Yes.
understanding. So the different colors are for the different tests to be run on that particular tube.
Yes, and they're essentially all feel like a different, or not all of them have things in them, but like a solution that helps a certain test be run.
Sure. And do you know from your training that there's a certain order that the blood needs to be drawn in based on the different substances that are in these specific tubes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you know what that order is?
I could not tell you now. It's been a minute, to be honest.
I understand. So you don't know it off the top of your head, but you know that there is an order,
Yes, ma'am.
and that's procedural.
Yes, ma'am.
And why is that? Why does the order matter?
Because it can affect, I guess, contaminants.
Because again, there are substances in each of those
Yes,
tubes,
ma'am.
preservatives and things like that.
I don't know, to be honest. I think it makes it preservatives and like testing chemicals.
Sure, understood. Okay, so fair to say, if you're not sure what the order is, you're not sure what order they were drawn in on this particular day, right?
Correct.
Okay, understood. You mentioned printing a label. So once the blood is handed to you, you said you print a label. Can you explain that process to me?
Yes, ma'am. So we have a lab system, and so the labs are, we scan the patient label, so the same armband that goes on the patient, and that kind of populates the lab platform, I guess, like on the Epic chart. And then when that's populated, it pops up the orders that have been put in by the doctors or the nurse. And once those labs are populated, the labs that have been ordered, we can print those specific labels, and each of those are tagged like with the color top that it needs to be placed on.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure, I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
In this case, we have one that has, I'm going to get the name wrong. I'm going to say a pseudonym, but it was a different name other than Randy Vega.
Correct.
Why would one of those tubes have that name on it and not the second one?
I believe it was probably a confirmation after the rather than done.
Okay, so not sure why one's labeled differently than the other.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And would all of that identifying information be correct?
Correct.
Okay.
For the patient?
Yes,
I'm sorry,
the patient, no problem. The identifying information on the labels on the blood tubes, that information is verified to be correct.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's important for identification purposes, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because if we're running tests on these patients, we need to know whose blood we have.
Exactly.
So we don't,
I'm sorry.
you're okay, go ahead.
We have like a registration team that handles the actual conversion of the profiles and the paperwork. And then there's also, we had 2 wristbands on, or all the trauma patients get 2 wristbands. That one of them is for it's called the blood band in case any blood products need to be given, and that has an extra yellow label, which is also scanned.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Satterfield. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Sir, you were asked about contents of the tube, coagulants, contaminants, and so on and so forth. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Yes, sir.
In your experience, in your time doing this, have you ever seen a hospital add ethyl alcohol to blood?
I add it in.
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Satterfield. Ms. Secretary.
Your Honor, state calls Officer Ryan Lynn.
You raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I did.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name?
Ryan Lynn,
Where are you currently employed, sir?
County Police Department.
In what capacity?
I work in the traffic division.
How long have you worked with the traffic?
Worked alongside traffic division for the last 7 years.
Thank you. Is it fair to say that you've received training in DUI detection and investigation, sir?
Yes, I received basic, advanced, and drug recognition expert levels.
Thank you, sir. Were you made aware of a motor vehicle crash involving Randy Vega that occurred on November 25th, 2023?
Yes, I did.
Were you asked to do anything special in relation to that investigation, sir?
Yes, at that time, I was actually off. I was at my house and I received a phone call from the traffic supervisor, investigator Sergeant Chris Molinex. He had asked me to come out and meet at the hospital to help with the investigation in relation to a fatality crash.
Were you asked to do anything regarding paperwork at the hospital?
At the hospital, my job was to investigate the crash, and then it led to paperwork after that.
Okay. That paperwork that occurred after that, was that involving a search warrant?
Yes, it was.
What was that search warrant for, please?
The search warrant was for Randy Vega's blood.
Okay. And did you went to the hospital to execute that search warrant?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you see the individual here today that the search warrant was executed upon?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And can you identify him by what he's wearing, please?
He is wearing a tan blazer with a white shirt,
Thank you. Sitting between his two attorneys.
sitting between two attorneys. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Search warrant was executed for a blood draw. Did you witness the blood draw?
Yes, sir, I did.
Where did the staff member get the tubes used to store the defendant's blood from the search warrant execution?
For the search warrant execution that I had a blood alcohol kit or a BAC kit that contained 2 vials empty that were provided by myself.
Okay. What color top were the tubes?
They were gray top.
What's the significance of that?
It's standardized procedure, and it also signifies what is inside of the tubes as well.
Do you know what's inside those tubes?
Not on the scientific level, but I do know that it's used for anticoagulation and preservatives.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable telling the jury what anticoagulants are?
It just keeps that way when we send the blood off that it doesn't become a solid. It's actually giving them blood to actually sample as much as they can. It's a liquid state.
Gotcha. I'm going to pass you 2 photographs that have been stapled together. Officer Lynn, do you recognize those photographs, sir?
I do.
Okay. What are those photographs of, please?
The 2 vials of blood that I provided.
Okay. Your Honor, state requests that this be entered as exhibit number 72. 73. Thank you. 73. I'm sorry? No, ma'am. Sir, I'm going to ask you to turn around, please. What's that?
It's the pictures that you just showed me of the 2 vials of blood.
Okay, and who is associated with these tubes of blood? And you witnessed the blood being drawn into these tubes.
Yes, I did.
When you were witnessing the blood draw occurring, it's fair to say that you've received training on what the appropriate procedure is?
To an extent, yes.
Okay. Did anything seem out of the ordinary as far as the blood draw goes?
No, it was a typical standard. It followed the procedures that I've seen hundreds of times.
Okay. I'm going to click through to the second photograph. What's that, please?
Still the pictures of vials with identification.
Just a different angle?
That's correct.
Okay. So both of those photos represent the same tubes that were drawn from Randy Vega's blood or body blood draw from the execution of the search warrant, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury what you did with those tubes upon receiving them back from the staff member?
So what happens from there is that I will collect them. I will, according to the instruction sheet that's provided inside of the VAC kit, we are to turn them over and back over to mix up the items inside of the vials 5 times. I do it 7. And then we put them back into the bubble wrap. We seal the bubble wrap. We place the bubble wrapped vials into a plastic baggie with an absorbent pad, and then place them into a box along with the toxicology request. That is then placed, the cover is placed over that, and then we are sealing that with our initials and our batch number and placing identifying information on the box.
Okay. And sir, I prematurely shut my computer. I apologize, but we can refer back to the exhibit. Do you recall what time the blood draw occurred?
Not off the top of my head, but it's in the ballpark. No, 17. 7 o'clock.
This help refresh your recollection, sir. When the blood occurred.
Yes, it would have been 7:26 p.m. that evening.
Okay. So that is November 25th, 2023. At what time?
19:26, which would have been 7 p.m.
Taking a step back, why invert the tubes? Why not shake them?
It advises not to.
Okay. So you're following the directions?
Correct.
Okay. What is, and I know we just touched on this a little bit, what is a Tennessee Bureau of Investigation blood alcohol collection kit?
It's basically a kit that's provided from TBI so that we can collect the blood sample, and then it has all the required documentation and all the request information inside of it, so that when we submit it, it has all the required items needed for evidence collection
Okay. And
processing.
you testified about how everything was packaged back up.
Yes,
Was there a form associated with this?
there was.
What's the form?
It's the toxicology request form that basically has identifying information. It states, what my name is, what my batch number is, what agency I'm associated with, what our agency originating number is, so that way it has a serial number attached to our agency, and it also has the dependents information and whether or not we request alcohol or drug and or both, and why we are requesting such a sample.
Did you fill out such a form in this case?
I did.
Okay. And did it have the information that you just provided
I did.
associated with Randy Vegas matter?
That's correct.
Was the agency case number associated with this 23-126225?
That's correct.
Yes, sir. packaging?
Yes, it is. It's got like an envelope sealant on it that is wet. Use a baby wipe to moisten it and seal it.
Okay. After you had secured the blood samples in the TBI BAC collection kit, where did you place them?
I took them to, they were in my car at the moment, and then I transported them to the Chattanooga Property Division for evidence processing.
One question I didn't ask, we were discussing the form in the agency case number. Where did that form go also?
The original copy of that form actually goes back inside the box prior to sealing.
Okay. Where did you take the blood samples after they were secured again, please? After from your car, where did they go next?
They went to the Chattanooga Property Division.
Okay. Will you please tell the jury how you go about securing blood samples to the Chattanooga Police Department's property division, please?
Are you asking how I submit the
Yes,
evidence?
generally.
So in that topic, anytime there's a BAC kit, there's a special small mini fridge that we have in there for temperature control, so that way it doesn't get overheated and cause any damages or any evaporation. So we'll place that BAC kit inside of the refrigerator, and we used to have a property tech on site all the time. But given that it was there after hours, we place it in the front mini fridge, and then when a property technician comes in, they will remove it from the mini fridge and place it behind the secure gate, and then they enter it in. We also enter an agency number and an item number based on the BAC kit into the form, so that way they know which form was tied and correlated to that BAC kit.
Same agency number?
It is.
Okay. Is this in a secure location where the evidence is stored?
It is. Only police have access to it with key card identification and logs.
Okay. Is it secure to the point where are law enforcement officers allowed to just walk in and out of evidence?
They can walk into the front lobby portion, and there's locker storage, there's mini fridge, and there's other little areas that have other types of evidence storage right there. But as far as where it's collected at all, when you turn in the evidence in any way, shape, or form, it's secured from that point, and nobody can just willy-nilly just come in and get it.
Okay. If an officer wanted to take a piece of evidence out, they'd have to sign for it.
That's correct. There's a chain of custody on the back of the property.
Thank you, sir. Pass the witness, Your Honor. Oh, and I apologize. Is everything that we discussed what occurred in Marina Vegas matter?
Yes.
Thank you.
You testified that you were called in to investigate the crash, correct?
That's correct.
Would that have been specifically for purposes of potential DUI?
Yes, it was the potential at that point.
And why you? Why would you have been called off duty?
Off duty because at the time I was working on a DUI unit. I do have the most amount of experience, and I was a senior officer in the DUI unit at that point.
Okay. And fair to say this was a pretty serious, significant crash, right? A pretty serious investigation since we did have fatalities.
All of our fatalities were treated the exact same as far as level of seriousness goes, so I didn't treat it any different.
Sure. As far as you know, were you the first person that was sent to interview Mr. Vega for the purposes of determining probable cause for DUI and collecting evidence?
Yes, originally when I responded to the hospital, I knew that there was a crash involved, so the normal interaction was based on just trying to figure out what was the contents of the crash.
Okay.
And then during that, it did open up the door for a DUI investigation.
Okay. What were you wearing when you got to the hospital?
It would have been a polo shirt and some khakis.
Okay. Are you issued a body camera?
Am I issued a body
Uh-huh.
camera? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you go and get your body camera on this particular date?
No, ma'am, I did not.
So you conducted an interview of Mr. Vega without recording it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there a particular reason why you didn't think that it was important to record anything that you'd noticed since you were investigating for the purposes of determining whether he was under the influence of something?
Absolutely, there's reasons for that. And one of the reasons is that the uniform of the day that I was wearing, it was that I didn't have a uniform ready, such as this. And so I grabbed the fastest thing I could put on was a polo and some khakis, which is considered our soft uniform in policy. that does not have a place or a holder for a body camera specifically, nor is it required in that such capacity. Secondly, to that is that I knew that I was going to be in a hospital setting, and typically in a hospital setting, given that there's so many other people inside the hospital, they do not like, they actually frown upon us recording in such an open environment.
Were you aware that Officer Alexander's body camera video was played today of the hospital blood draw
No,
that was taken originally?
no, I did not.
Your Honor, may we approach? Specifically regarding your DUI investigation, did you write a separate report?
Are you referring to an incident report?
I'm referring to any report that notated your findings as far as your investigation for potential alcohol impairment.
Yes, there's a search warrant that was issued for that.
A search warrant. Did you write a report?
I do not recall.
Okay. And approximately how long did you spend with Mr. Vega doing this investigation?
Initially, there was just a short window at the time that I was there, and then when I returned after, because we have to leave to go get the magistrate's assignment, it's located at the jail, so I had to leave from the hospital, go down to the jail to get the magistrate to sign off in person on the search warrant, and then there was travel back. From that point in time, I don't remember what time I arrived or the time that the gap was of when the blood was drawn.
It's fair to say you only talked with him for a couple of minutes.
That's fair to say.
Okay. And while you were speaking with him, was he being medically treated?
There was a portion of time where he did start receiving medical treatment.
Did you notice him to be in pain?
He was discomforted, yes.
And before you asked him any questions or notated any observations about him that might indicate impairment, did you ask if he had received any kind of pain medication or any kind of narcotic for his treatment?
No, I did not.
You indicated that you witnessed the blood draw. You did not draw the blood, correct?
That's
You're not a phlebotomist or a nurse, is that right?
Not at this time.
Do you know what kind of swab was used to clean the arm for the blood draw?
It would have been a betadine swab.
Why do you know that?
Because I watched the observation and it was colored.
Okay, and why a betadine swab?
Alcohol is not standard practice here in the blood draw. Typically, and I don't know the science behind it, so I won't speak
That's
to
fair.
how that affects it as far as that goes. But standard practice is for beta iodine to be used.
So for a forensic blood draw, beta iodine is used, not alcohol swabs, correct?
That's correct.
And when we say forensic blood draw, I'm not sure if that is a term that would be familiar to the jury. We mean for purposes of use in potential litigation, correct? Is that your understanding as well?
Evidentiary purposes.
And that's why you have your own blood alcohol test kits that you carry
Yes.
with the gray top tube.
Yes.
And you indicated there are specific anticoagulants and preservatives within that are specially formulated for forensic testing, right?
That's correct.
And that's to preserve the blood, because sometimes it's months before you actually get a test run on these particular tubes. Is that right?
I'm not exactly sure on the procedures of how that works.
I understand.
Can you clarify the question, please?
Sure. Sometimes it takes a significant period of time from when you submit the blood to the lab until you get a result back, right?
That is correct. It can be a little bit lengthy or time, depends on multiple factors on their behalf.
Sure. On the part of the lab.
That's correct. I can't speak to that.
Understood. That you answered my question. So you indicated that you are familiar with the instructions for forensic draws where we invert the tubes several times. Do you know why?
Not specifically, no, other than following the instructions on the back.
And when you say instructions on the back, there are a list of instructions, correct?
There is,
Yeah. How many? Like 10?
I think there's 10 or 11.
Yes. Okay. And those procedures are specific to how to properly use the TBI blood kits that you all use for forensic testing, right?
Yes, it's step by step.
Okay. Does the word hemolysis make sense to you? Is that something you've heard before?
It does not.
Fair enough. What time did you get to the hospital approximately to speak with Mr. Vega?
I would have to refer to my search warrant of the time that I made contact. I don't know exactly the exact time that I made contact with him.
And what time was the blood draw?
The blood drawing happened at 7:29, 7:26, something like that in the afternoon.
Do you know when the
Right on the top fell on the bottom.
Okay, thank you. Do you know what time the accident was?
I was in the area 2 o'clock in the afternoon, if I remember correctly.
Let me try to help you because we all have heard testimony about this day. Would 3:20, 3:30 sound about right?
Yes, it would.
No problem. That was not a trick question.
Understand.
So approximately 4 hours later, you're there seeking a warrant to take his blood.
Yes.
Okay. Were you aware that there had already been a request to subpoena hospital blood that was taken for medical purposes?
At that point, I didn't know that.
In your investigation of him to determine whether or not you believed he was impaired, am I correct that you would need probable cause to believe he was impaired in order to request a warrant, right?
Yes, and in order to get a warrant, you would have to provide an affidavit, which includes probable cause to get that warrant granted before a magistrate judge or any judge.
Sure. And probable cause meaning more likely than not, right? Probably as opposed to maybe.
Correct.
Is that a fair description for our jurors that may not understand that term?
Probable cause is using the police officer's investigation and training and tactics to believe that it's most likely occurred or has occurred.
And that was your job to ascertain probable cause because you were the person filling out the affidavit to get the warrant, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And in this probable cause investigation, am I correct that nowhere did you indicate that there was actually an odor of alcohol
Not in the warrant specifically, no.
and that there was no admission of drinking?
That's correct. At that time, there was not.
Had any medical personnel around you mentioned that he was had anything in his system or that he was being treated at the hospital for any kind of alcohol ingestion?
No, there was no knowledge of that.
Okay. You indicated glassy eyes, right?
I did.
Okay. And do you recall that this was a significant traffic accident with an airbag that had exploded in his face?
Yes, I'm clear.
Okay. And again, he may or may not have been given a narcotic prior to your interview with him.
Potentially.
Okay. And you did not have an opportunity to see him walk or move upright, correct?
Correct. He was not upright during our interaction. He was present the entire time.
Okay. And you obviously didn't witness any of the driving behaviors.
Correct. At that point in time, in fact, it was days after, before I had seen the video.
Okay. That was my other question. You did not review body cam video before you made your probable cause determination, correct?
No, I did not.
That's all I have.
Very brief. The odor you detected. Did you detect any kind of odor?
There was an odor. It was actually very distinct and vague at the exact same time. I know it doesn't really clarify, so I'll make it clarify.
Please.
Typically, the odor of an intoxicant has a very distinct smell based off of what they're drinking, such as being around someone that you can tell if they've had wine to drink or they've had beer to drink or something like that. It has that distinctive odor. But being in a car crash and having those other odors that were there, such as, chemicals and fluids of the vehicle, the airbags, the resin, even the fact that a building was involved, so there could have been other fluids such as Freon from an air conditioner unit or anything else that had some sort of odor. And I know that at that point in time in my investigation that there was a collision with a building, so I just kept an open mind when it comes down to like the odor that I was had smelled. It was very odd to me. It had that kind of the odor of an intoxicant type of odor, but it seemed like it had other things with it, which made it very odd to me. So I described it as an unusual odor in my affidavit.
There's a question about whether you were aware of an airbag exploding in Mr. Vega's face. Do you have any personal knowledge of how the airbag might have deployed, what points of contact it could have had on Mr. Vega, anything along those lines?
I have no clue where it touched.
Thank you, sir.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Officer Ryan.
Your Honor, state calls Marvin Perez.
I swear from it, this one you're about to give is good, nothing.
Your Honor, I need 1 brief minute, please. So then I'll be ready.
Take your time.
Thank you. Your Honor, may we have state's laptops?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Could you state your name?
Yes, Sergeant Martin Perez,
Thank you. Sergeant, where are you currently employed
Lieutenant of this department.
and in what capacity?
Right now, I'm a patrol supervisor.
How long have you worked with the CPD?
I've been there for going on 12 years next month.
Okay. Have you received training in DUI detection and investigation, sir?
Yes, I have.
Were you made aware of a motor vehicle crash involving Randy Vega that occurred on November 25th, 2023?
Yes, I
Were you asked to do anything in relation to this investigation, sir?
was.
Okay. And what were you asked to do?
I was asked to help assist in obtaining a hospital search warrant for the blood inside the lab of Erlanger Hospital.
Okay. Did you comply with this request?
Yes, I did.
Based on your training and experience in the field, will hospitals draw blood as part of a diagnosis or treatment?
Correct.
Okay. So you went to Erlanger. Okay. When you got there, did you actually execute the search warrant?
Yes,
And the search warrant was asking for what please? Like, what were you trying to receive when you got there?
I was trying to obtain blood that was drawn on the day of the crash when the defendant showed up to the ER and when he was being rendered aid in the hospital. That's when they drew blood.
Do you recall what day you went and executed the search warrant to get those blood samples?
Yes, it was this is day after the incident, which would have been Monday.
Okay.
November 27th.
27th of 2023, November.
Correct.
Morning, afternoon?
This morning.
Okay. Did a staff member present you with blood tubes from the hospital?
Yes.
And did those tubes have any identifying information on them?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to turn around, please. Thank you. Sir, these items have been marked as exhibits 70 and 71. Do you recognize these tubes?
I do.
And are those the tubes that you received when you executed the search warrant?
Yes.
Okay. And there's another same set of tubes,
Yes.
just different angle. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. When you received those tubes, sir, what did you do with them?
I took them into my possession, and I had the lab technician sign the search warrant as we do in the procedure. They are left a copy of it, and then I make sure I have the property.
Okay.
And then I walk outside of the lab into my police car, and then I drive it to our evidence locker.
Do you fill out any forms associated with the tubes when you're submitting them to evidence?
Yes, once I submit them, I fill out, I complete the form, because it's an existing form, because of the ongoing case.
And I'll take a step back, sir. Did you put the tubes in the TBI BAC collection kit?
Yes,
Okay, and is there a form associated with that?
yes,
What kind of information do you put into the form?
it's the toxicology request form, it's just basic information of the defendant, identifiers, demographics, my signature, my badge number, just basic information.
You filled out a form regarding this crash with Randy Vega's blood sample?
Correct.
Okay, and was that associated with Chattanooga Police Department agency case number 23-126225?
Yes.
Okay. So you've received the blood samples, you have the form, it's filled out, the form goes with the blood kit to TBI.
Correct.
What do you do with all of this next? What's the next step?
So it's sealed. I deposited inside with the property tag, along with the other evidence that we have in the case. And it wasn't until the next day, the Tuesday, where I made arrangements to personally drive those samples, the samples that I personally executed, secured from the lab, and then the samples from the day of.
Okay. So you kind of beat me to the punch a little bit. Once you have received these blood samples here and they've been put in a TBI BAC collection kit, where do you take them prior to their ultimate destination?
Take them to the property room where they are secured inside in an appropriate locker. In this case, because it's blood, it's secured inside of a refrigerator.
Open to the public?
No.
Okay. Once it's secured, can officers just walk in and out and have access to these tubes?
Not even officers can get it.
Okay. So the following day after you've turned in these tubes, you said that you were getting other bits of evidence and then going somewhere else. Can you tell the jury about what you collected from the Chattanooga Property Division and then where you went?
When the next day, Tuesday, that's where I made arrangements to personally deliver both sets of samples of blood to TBI. So I then returned to the property, and I had requested the court to withdraw the 2 samples of blood from the property tech. I then took that to my custody, and then I drove it to Nashville.
Okay. And so when you got to Nashville, where did you head to?
I headed to the TBI head office.
Okay. something you've done in the past?
Yes.
Okay, so once you get to the TBI head office in Nashville, what do you do then with those? You had 2 BAC blood collection kits from that you checked out,
Correct.
and both associated with Randy Vegas.
Correct.
Same agency case number.
Yes.
After you have these 2 kits, you get to Nashville and you're at TBI. What do you do with those kits next, please?
Then I meet a TBI agent, and I give them the 2 samples of blood evidence that I have, and then we fill out our appropriate chain of custody paperwork.
Okay, so so there's a handoff to the TBI agent.
Correct.
Okay, and then is that the last contact that you've had with the 2 TBI BAC blood collection kits associated with Randy Vegas matter?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Pass the witness, Your Honor.
One moment, please, Your Honor. I'll just finish my note. Hello again, Officer Perez. So you 2 were asked to get a search warrant for blood, correct?
Correct.
And that would mean that you were asked to make a probable cause determination as to impairment by alcohol, right?
Correct.
Okay, because that's what's required before you can get a search warrant, before you can seize the blood from the hospital.
Correct.
Okay. But you never actually interviewed Mr. Vega, did you?
Correct.
You never saw him or spoke to him? Okay. And you were actually working on your warrant, you said, November 27th, 2 days later?
Yes.
Okay. So you did not get to make a probable cause determination of impairment on your own accord. I can. You were not able to make a probable cause determination based on anything you specifically observed or investigated.
I read the facts that the other investigators had come up with.
What other investigator?
Investigator Lynn, who originally sought after the first search warrant for the bedside blood draw soliciting.
Okay, so you read Officer Lynn's, I guess it wasn't a report, would it have been his affidavit for the search warrant? Okay, you read that and used that to base your search warrant off of.
Yes.
Okay. Is that permitted?
I believe so, yes.
I'm not sure.
No, if it was signed, yes.
Are you a trained DUI investigator as well?
Yes.
Would that be one of the reasons that you specifically would have been asked to do this?
Correct.
Okay. But your training and expertise didn't really get to be used here because you didn't get to make personal observations, right?
Correct.
Okay. We just seen the pictures of those 2 blood tubes that you got from the hospital. Did you notice something different about those tubes than the tubes that we normally get from the BAC kits that you all are issued?
Yes.
Yeah, what was that?
Those tubes are typically come from the hospital.
Sure. And what's different about them?
The tops are colored.
Right. And do you know why the tops are different colors in those tubes versus the ones that you all use?
I'm not sure.
Does it ring a bell that it would be because there's different powdered substances in the tubes that the blood's mixed with because it was drawn for different purposes? Does that sound right?
I believe so.
Okay. Did you specifically check these tubes to ensure that they all matched Randy Vega's identifying information?
I don't remember if I did, but
Okay.
I do remember receiving two tubes after providing the Randy Vegas name and the lab technician provided those tubes.
Okay.
And that's what ultimately ended up going into evidence.
Okay. So the tubes that you would have collected from the hospital, those had obviously been sitting for 2 days, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you're not sure what was happening with those tubes in those 2 days? Because you weren't there specifically witnessing anything, right?
Right.
Okay. And you certainly don't have any video evidence from that room where they were stored for that 2-day period?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you ask to review anything like that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Do you even know who would have been responsible for storing that blood at the lab?
No.
Fair. I understand. And as far as you know, that blood was drawn for medical purposes, right?
Right.
That's why the different colored tubes as opposed to the forensic tubes.
Makes sense.
Okay. Do you know what tests were run on that blood before it came into your possession?
No.
Do you know how many tests were run on that blood before it came into your possession?
I don't know.
Do you know how many people would have handled that blood for those various tests?
Yeah, I would know.
Sure. I think it makes sense. How long does it take to get to Nashville?
Approximately about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, around that range.
So that blood is in your car during that time?
Yes.
And how did you come to you explained to them how you picked up the hospital blood, went to the lab, handed them the warrant, they gave you some blood.
Sure.
How did you come to get the blood that was run on the TBI kit? Or I'm sorry, the blood that was drawn from the TBI kit, the TBI tubes. Where did you get those from?
You mean from the other blood draw?
Yes, the one that Ryan Lynn had asked for.
Okay. Yeah, so those were in property as well.
And when you say in property, where is that? What is?
It's on Oakville Highway. It's
Okay.
next to the police service center. It's just a little annex building next to it.
Okay. And for forensic blood draws, I believe Ryan testified that you actually have to sign in and out to take the blood.
Right.
So you are aware of everybody that touches it while it's being stored there.
Yes.
Okay. And you have a document that shows anyone that did remove the blood or put the blood back?
Correct.
Okay. And you didn't receive any such documentation from the hospital, right?
No.
Okay. In your affidavit for the search warrant, you talk about Mr. Vega having become aggressive and fighting medical personnel. Do you recall that, or would you like to look at your affidavit?
I don't mind having to look at it to recollect.
That's fine if you're more comfortable. First of all, let the jury know if you recognize that document to be your affidavit.
Yes.
Okay. And is that what you had stated in the
Correct.
highlighted portion? It would become combative and try to fight hospital personnel.
Yes.
Did you see any video of that?
I did not.
Did you review any video at all of Randy's demeanor before you wrote this affidavit?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Yes. Did you review any body camera footage whatsoever of any interactions with Randy before you filled out this affidavit?
No, there wasn't any body camera. I just went off of the other officers' findings.
Okay. And your subpoena was specifically for the actual vial of blood drawn at the hospital, not for a test result run by the hospital, correct?
Correct.
So to the best of your knowledge, the hospital never ran a test for a blood alcohol result on their own.
They probably did, but that's something we go after the blood to then go inside do the retest.
You say probably did. Do you know for sure?
I don't know 100%, but I know that's one of the tests the hospitals run. It's having toxins.
Have you seen such a test in this case?
Not in this case. No.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Very brief, sir. Are getting search warrants for blood samples and blood draws common occurrences as a DUI officer?
Yes.
Is it common practice to rely on other officers' experiences when filling out the affidavits?
Yes.
Is that unusual?
That's
And just last thing I want to touch on with you. Whenever you receive the tubes, and you placed them in the TBI BAC collection kit, can you tell the jury how you secured them? How do you go about it?
So the TBI blood kits, it's a little white box, and inside come with two with a gray topper blood vials that are empty, of course, and they come with a little bubble wrap plastic sleeve, and each has its own slot for each of the tubes. So when you have your sample, you slide in your single tube into one of the slots, then the other one to the other slot, and then it has a little adhesive strip that you pull over, and then you put it inside this little bubble wrap packet. You secure it that way, and it's submitted with your one of the carbon copies of the toxicology request form that's filled out for the lab technician to understand, whose blood it is, who's the officer, all the demographics and all that information.
Same thing you did in Randy Vega's case?
Correct.
Okay, and pretty secure box?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Great. As every lawyer always says, very quickly. Officer Perez, your training under all the DUI courses that you've taken is to basically notice on the road drunk drivers, right? You've learned how to identify certain behaviors, pulling those people over, giving them certain tests to determine if there's probable cause for an arrest, and then arresting them and getting blood draws and or a breath test, right? So generally speaking, you would be the person who would be with someone determining probable cause for an arrest. That's what you did on the streets, right? As a DUI investigator?
Yes.
With your own observations, your own body cam, under the way that you were trained.
Yes.
Field sobriety tests, things of that nature.
When applicable, yes.
Thank you. That's all.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Officer Chris.
Your Honor, state calls Hannah Adams.
Someone swear from the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Hello. May I proceed, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Could you state your name?
My name is Hannah Adams, that's HANNAADAMS.
Thank you. Where are you currently employed?
I work for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation in the National Crime Laboratory and the Evidence Receiving Unit.
Okay. How long have you worked there?
I've been in the Evidence Receiving Unit for 3.5 years.
Okay. Can you tell the jury about what your duties are?
As a forensic technician in the Evidence Receiving Unit, I'm tasked with accepting evidence from law enforcement agencies as well as the medical examiner's office and the district attorney's office. I then process this evidence, transfer it to our scientists inside of the lab, and I also return evidence to law enforcement agencies.
What is your standard practice for receiving blood evidence that comes in a TBI BAC blood collection kit, please?
So we can receive these blood alcohol kits one of three ways. It can either be hand delivered, it can be placed inside of our drop box, which is right outside of our unit, or it can be mailed in by the agency.
Okay. Once you've received the kits, what do you do, Ms. Adams?
Whenever I receive the kit, we will notate what time we received the kit as well as the date. Whenever we do this, we will then process the kit. We will open this kit one at a time to ensure that all of the information matches on the tubes as what is labeled on the paperwork. We will then enter all of this evidence into what we call LIMS, which is our Laboratory Information Management System. From there, it will generate a unique ID for this specific case. We will then enter all of the pertinent information that we have received on paperwork for this case. That will then generate a unique label for each piece of evidence that is assigned with this case. We'll label those blood tubes and we'll transfer them on to the toxicology unit.
Thank you. What do you do if a sample, a blood tube, appears to have been tampered with, damaged, or is just not viable for some reason?
I cannot attest to the viability of a tube. That would be better suited for the forensic scientist. But if I receive a blood alcohol kit, open it up and see if there's anything wrong with the tubes or anything that I've never seen before, I'll go to the office next door, which is our toxicology unit, and I'll have one of the forensic scientists come and look at that for me.
A visual inspection, fair to say?
Yes.
And do you conduct this visual inspection every time you have that you personally are dealing with a TBI-BAC blood collection kit?
Yes, we do. We also take photographs of the blood tubes for whatever sample we may receive in the condition that they arrive to our lab in.
Okay. Once you have received the evidence, how are they stored?
So if we have a little bit of a backlog, say, the kits that came in today, the ones that came in yesterday will be processed first. So we do all of those in chronological order. We will place those inside of our secure vault located in our evidence unit, and they will be stored in a refrigerator inside of that vault. Once they're transferred onto toxicology, we also place them in a secure refrigerator inside of their unit as well.
Did you receive samples associated with Chattanooga Police Department agency case number 23126-225?
Yes.
Okay. And how many samples did you receive?
I received 2 gray stopper tubes and 2 hospital tubes as well.
Okay. Was a Tennessee Bureau of Investigation laboratory case management number assigned to these tubes?
Yes.
Do you recall what that number is?
May I reference my request form?
Please.
This number would have been 231-021-148.
Thank you, ma'am. And where did you get these samples from?
These samples were hand-delivered by Officer Marvin Perez.
Okay. And what is the subject or individual associated with these 4 tubes that you received?
The name on the paperwork is Randy Vega.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to inspect these tubes as you previously testified to?
Yes, with each case, we follow our standard operating procedures, and we will take a look at each of those tubes and we will photograph those, as I said before.
When you reviewed these tubes, was there anything concerning to you about the samples?
No, there was not, and had there been anything different about the tubes, had they been damaged or anything, that would have been noted on our case file.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Councilwoman Strong.
What kinds of things are you looking for on these tubes of note?
Sure. We will look for what we call a unique identifier. In this case, there was a first and last name on the tubes. If I recall correctly, there was also the same agency case number on both of the tubes that I received as well. So we were very first looking for that unique identifier. In this case, would have been first and last name.
Where would an agency identifier have come from?
The agency case number that was on the 2 gray stopper tubes is the same one that was on the paperwork that I received.
But the medical, the blood that had come from the hospital that was drawn for medical purposes wouldn't have had that same agency identifier, right?
This one did not, but it had the first and last name as well.
Would you know if the blood had been shaken too much such that hemolysis had occurred just by visually looking at it?
Whenever I receive blood alcohol kits, I do not determine, like I said, if the tube is viable for testing or not. The scientist is the one that will determine if there's anything, any clots or anything like that inside of those blood tubes. They will be the ones to determine that and also enter that into the case file.
So when you say you inspect the tubes to see if there's anything of note or anything wrong with them, what are you looking for then?
I I'm looking for those unique identifiers. I'm also looking to see, obviously if the tube was broken or cracked, there would have been some blood leaking inside of the bag that is placed inside of this blood alcohol kit. There was nothing like that with any of this. Any of these 3 tubes, or 4 tubes, yes, excuse me, 4 tubes that I received. So what I was looking for was first and last name and any other unique identifiers that matched my paperwork.
Do you know how the blood was stored as it was driven to you?
I do not, I cannot testify to what happened to this sample before it arrived to my lab.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
No redirect, John.
Thank you, Alex.
Your Honor, may we approach? Yes, sir. Feel free to stand up and stretch. Gallery wants to stand straight. If you're someone had you step inside the room. I want to say, you want to start from the beginning of the podium so they can.
Thank you. So specifically we'll begin with the hospital blood that was drawn. To begin with, I do believe that the state has a chain of custody issue, that there is a confrontation right issue, and a 902 authentication issue. To begin with, as far as chain of custody and right of confrontation, I don't know who drew the blood. I don't know what kind of swab was used. I specifically had Officer Lynn testify that they used betadine and not alcohol. That is TBI procedures. And let me pause here and state there is case law that says, and I'm not sure what they're relying on, but there is case law that says that medical blood draws are deemed reliable because they're drawn for medical purposes and because of the need for medical records to be correct, they're reliable. The cases that I looked at were talking specifically about tests that were run at the hospital. So when you go and you actually get the hospital enzymatic blood test, that hospital ran their alcohol test on that blood that record is what's coming to us. Those are deemed reliable and admissible under statute and case law. The hospital did not run an enzymatic test in this case. We have 300 pages of records. There just simply wasn't one done. So what they did is went and got the blood vial, took that blood vial, and they're running it at TBI. So it becomes what I would call a forensic test. And I think that those rules and statutes would apply then. I don't know who drew the blood. I don't know what procedure was used. As Ryan Lynn also testified, there is an instruction sheet on the back for a forensic draw. He specifically said we invert the tube. It's to get the anticoagulants and the preservatives mixed throughout the blood. Shaking it does break it, breaks the red blood cells. We get more liquid. There's reasons for that. We don't know that that was done in this case because this wasn't a forensic draw. So I don't know who drew it. I don't know if there was an alcohol swab used. I don't know if proper forensic procedures were used. Additionally, and this is a really interesting and important issue, Steve Brown has a motion pending for this very issue down in Stillman's courtroom. There is a order that medical blood is drawn for, and their nurse actually did testify that. The tubes are like red, green, purple, yellow. And there is an order that they have to be drawn based on the chemicals that are in those actual tubes because it could be cross-contaminated and those chemicals react differently depending on what tests are done. The other issue with the medical test in and of itself, without me being able to have someone testify as to how those tests were run, is that there were pipettes and things being stuck in that blood as that blood was tested. There's absolutely no evidence that that was a tube of blood that had not had any other tests run on it. It was.
Actually, I'm clear. This part of here, I was talking about how some of the blood from the hospital for types of tests.
Correct.
Thinking that some of the blood tubes that were provided to the officer might have been tested already. I've got pipettes.
I'm almost certain they were tested already because according to the medical records, they were pulled, again, not for an alcohol test, but for platelets. There's all sorts of other reasons, all sorts of red blood cells, white blood cell count, all other sorts of reasons that they were running tests on these for medical purposes. The medical records actually show what tests specifically were run as this blood that we know was drawn at 4:17 p.m. Without me being able to confront those witnesses who drew it and without someone testifying as to what was or wasn't done to these tubes, there's a little bit of a chain of custody issue. There's a right of confrontation issue as I can't question them to determine whether or not this blood was tainted or was properly preserved for forensic testing purposes. Additionally, Exhibit 67 is Mr. Vega's driver's license, which shows a date of birth of 10/28/1979. These blood tests have a date of birth of June 28th, 1976. The forensic blood tests have his correct birth date on them. The other issue in the case law, again, it's interesting that they're stating that because these, and I had Satterfield testify to it. It's very important that these records are correct, right? It's very important we get this identifying information correct because these are used for the purposes of medical testing and therefore it needs to be right. There's no one here explaining, were there two Randy Vegas? How'd this get in there incorrectly? And there's no correcting of it because there's been no witness to testify to correct this. To the extent that hospital blood is deemed correct, because it's hospital blood and medical records are deemed correct, this rebuts that presumption of correctness. And so my argument would be that, and this is a 902 argument, my argument would be that they would have to explain this somehow and clean this up for this to have that presumption of correctness. Additionally, as to chain of custody, and I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, additionally, as a chain of custody, we don't know where this was stored. Again, this wasn't drawn for forensic purposes. As our officers testified up there, they are very careful about where the blood is stored. It's locked in a locker. People have to sign it in and out. It's definitely refrigerated. And this is the state asks those questions. This is a secure location. This is a secure room. Not anybody has access to it. That's not necessarily the case with a medical test. Mr. Boers actually stated in our suppression hearing that this is just throwaway stuff that anybody can come get. They were done with it. The hospital can give it away. That's what it is. There was no reason for that blood to have been preserved in any way to preserve it to make it reliable for forensic purposes, right? If this was leftover blood from tests that had already been run, we have no idea how it's stored. I can't ask someone, was it refrigerated? Did it sit out? Was it pulled out of the trash when someone said, hey, by the way, I need that blood? Those are all, it's the state's burden to lay that foundation and to prove chain of custody and to authenticate this under 901, and that just simply hasn't been done here for all of those reasons. You know what? Sorry. I grabbed the wrong notepad. Yeah, vacation. There's a lot of words to say. I don't think so, Your Honor. And just for the record, I was referring to Exhibit 67, where we can prove what Randy Vega's birth date was. Exhibit 70 that shows the incorrect birth date on Randy Vega's blood. And 73 that shows the correct birth date on the forensic tubes.
Yes, Your Honor, if I could have just a moment, I can collect some stuff.
I have an argument with us to the forensic blood, but I figured we do one at a time so as not to confuse everything.
I think that's wise. So the first thing I'd like to do, Your Honor, this is Exhibit 72, defendant's medical records, and I am turning to page 52 of that. Because I note Ms. Haydock, I believe the tubes show 6/20 of 78, or they show a date of birth that is different than what is on his driver's license. So I am quoting from a field titled Cooperative Nursing Note. Upon arrival to POH and checking patient ID band, patient notified RN that DOB was incorrect, called and notified registration and verified DOB with ID scanned in Epic, DOB updated, and new ID bands placed on patient. Somebody made a mistake. The defendant himself corrected it.
As to that issue,
I'm not done with it. I apologize.
Give you a chance to respond to it.
you want me to leave that one alone while he finishes? Okay.
The remainder of the records abound with the defendant's personally identifying information. They include his social security number. They include his date of birth, the correct one, the October of 78 one, his name. You'll notice that the tubes also reference a Brown Alpha Doe November. Those are correlated to Mr. Vega's name in those records. As Mr. Satterfield testified to, when somebody comes into the ER and they're not able to give their name, they're given that random assigned name. Those records explain how they get from that to Mr. Vega. And actually, if you watch Officer Alexander's body camera, one thing you'll notice is that Alexander hands the nurse the ID so she can start plugging that information in. However, I want to talk about chain of custody. And I am quoting because Ms. Haydock referenced some case law, mostly about, I believe she called it enzymatic testing, that basically the hospital runs a test. It has a BAC in the hospital in the medical records. So I'm citing to State of Tennessee versus Harlan Ferguson. That is 2025 WL 1514077. And Ferguson at page 22 of the opinion actually cites a lot of the law that Ms. Haydock talked about. It notes that when hospital staff obtains blood samples for purposes of diagnosis and treatment, you can generally get those in through the medical records, through the hearsay rule. That's State versus Goldston. Hospital records kept for daily purposes and not prepared for the purpose of litigation are typically deemed reliable. Same case. Trustworthiness of the medical record is presumed. That is State v. Warlick, 2007, WL 1439648. Quoting this now from Ferguson, the case I cited to, the state is not required to present additional witnesses regarding the drawing and storing of the blood sample to admit the medical records. That is citing the State versus Asbury, 2010 WL 1741365. That case rejected the defendant's claim that the medical records reflecting the BAC they lacked sufficient trustworthiness under 803.6. But
Was that the 2025 case?
no, sir. No, sir. This is still referencing another one. Now, what I'm about to quote from is the 2025 case. It's actually very recent. And the reason that I selected this case is because it is functionally identical to the scenario that we have here. What Ferguson dealt with, it was a vehicular homicide case out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Just as was done here, police later obtained a search warrant, went to the hospital, went to the lab, said, hey, I want blood that you guys took for diagnostic purposes. And quoting from page 23 of that opinion, because the state need not establish the chain of custody of blood samples taken at a hospital for medical purposes to admit medical records reflecting the results of the BAC testing conducted by the hospital personnel, due to the reliability of the records, we question the necessity of requiring the state to establish the chain of custody of blood samples while in the hospital's custody prior to their transfer to the custody of law enforcement for forensic analysis by the TBI. As noted by the state in its brief, the hospital has a, quote, vested interest in ensuring that the blood labeled with the defendant's name belonged to the defendant, because the hospital drew the blood for the purpose of conducting testing and screening in advance of the defendant's major surgery. The crucial life and death decisions by hospital personnel are dependent on the proper obtaining, handling, and preserving of blood samples. Under such circumstances, we conclude that the presentation of evidence to establish the chain of custody of blood samples while under the custody and care of the hospital was not necessary to preclude the possibility of tampering, loss, substitution, or mistake. In plain English, they have a vested interest in getting this right because if they get it wrong, bad things could happen to their patient. And so that is the holding of the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals. It's fairly recent. However, regardless, even assuming the state is required to establish the integrity of those blood samples while in the hospital's custody, the Court of Criminal Appeals concluded that the state had done so in that case by simply admitting the medical records, showing when and where the blood was drawn. Again, that is from page 23 of that opinion. They also note that when the police went to the laboratory, they were provided with blood tubes by a technician labeled with the patient's name. They also indicated the time that the sample was drawn. Your Honor, quite frankly, we have gone above and beyond that here. One of the things I noted with the witness, Mr. Satterfield, is I had him point out his unique identifier where he logged those blood samples, and at 4:17 p.m. on the 25th. Page 23 is where I've been referencing, sir. We have gone above and beyond that. He testified that much like Officer Lynn did, he observed the blood samples being drawn in his presence. It was his responsibility to collect them, label them, and walk them over to the lab. He testified that he did so. You have Officer Perez testify that when he shows up to the lab, he gets some blood tubes with Randy Vega's name on them. He drives them over, logs them into evidence, and I forget how many days later he said he personally drove them to TBI. That chain of custody has been established. Ms. Haydock has referenced a confrontation clause matter, and I apologize, I've got a cold. I need to drink some water. Ms. Haydock referenced a confrontation clause matter. Your Honor, the objection seems to actually be that the state didn't call the folks that she'd like to talk to ask questions of, okay? That's not a confrontation clause issue. A threshold question for whether or not the confrontation clause is implicated is whether the evidence that has been put in is testimonial in nature, okay? That's typically dealing with other people's statements, not Mr. Satterfield saying, I saw that blood being drawn, I walked it over to the lab, or Mr. Perez saying, I collected it from the lab, I drove it to TBI. That would be testimonial. The fact that we didn't call the person that actually drew the blood is not. Again, I note that the defendant himself corrected his date of birth. The remainder of the records correctly reference his 10/28/79 date of birth. And so I submit that under this Ferguson case, merely putting the medical records in would have been enough, but we have gone above and beyond that.
While you're here.
Yes, sir.
You say that we talked about perhaps contaminant being from the hospital blood. If the claim
So, yeah, it does say, quote, "The crucial life and death decisions by hospital personnel are dependent upon the proper obtaining, handling, and preserving of blood samples." So preservation and handling, basically what the Court of Appeals is saying here is that we're assuming that the hospital is following best practices. They have a vested interest in not messing these samples up. So again, they can make correct testing results.
So I get that part of it. I think what she's referencing to, correct me if I'm wrong to say that, is after the blood was properly collected, preserved, it was sent to their lab perhaps for testing.
Mm-hmm.
So during that testing procedure, pipettes or other types of testing chemicals might have been added to the vials that were later obtained by the office.
Certainly. So what I would submit, Your Honor, is that Ms. Haydick's objection is actually a little bit premature. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we have that opportunity. But referencing into some other DUI case law regarding chain of custody, in general, what a sufficient chain of custody, we expect you to hear from a forensic scientist as to whether or not the sample showed evidence of contamination, degradation, so on and so forth. We just haven't got to that point because we haven't got that witness. But I'm citing the State versus Singh, SINGH, which is 684 Southwest 3rd, 774. That talks about basically the standard steps that the Court of Criminal Appeals has recognized as proper chain of custody for a BAC draw. One of those is that the TBI forensic scientist testifies that the sample showed no irregularity, tampering, or, and this is the important part, degrading during testing. So I think that once the agent, assuming she does testify in that manner, testifies, at that point we will have met that objection.
Ferguson is the exact case I was referring to when I talked about case law that talks about the reliability of medical records. And again, the whole crux of that case is that these tests are reliable because of the serious nature of getting these records right. That reliability, that presumption is completely rebutted. I mean, in the same breath, the state's saying, yeah, well, that was just an error. Well, the errors aren't the birth date. Errors aren't supposed to happen in these very reliable tests. That's the whole purpose for not having to go through these chain of custody exercises. The right of confrontation comes from my ability to go talk to this person and find out how it happened. I specifically asked Mr. Satterfield, these labels are right. He said, yes, they have to be separate wristbands. People in medical records, I can't remember who he said, the people that basically check them in are putting this information in. If the state's argument is that this was simply a typographical error, they would have had to have brought or should have brought someone in to explain that so I could cross-examine that person so I could be satisfied that that's exactly what happened. The fact that this is a typographical error is a presumption that this court is asking to be made. As to that medical record that Mr. Boers read, that's actually hearsay within hearsay. Now, his medical records, according to the certificate of authentication, gets them in without the custodian of records. That's fine. We can presume that those records are an exact copy of what was kept at the hospital. The business records exception gets them in, stating that they are kept in the normal course of business and therefore are generally reliable. It does not get you over other exceptions, such as hearsay. That statement about what that nurse did and what was said to Vega can't come in on the statement alone. She would have had to have been brought here to explain what happened again so I could cross-examine her and figure out how it happened, how it took place. Mind you, that didn't happen until 3 days later. Like it was almost on the last day. Throughout those records, they are discussing treating a 50-year-old man. He's not 50. That was something that was incorrect. The incorrect birth date rebuts this whole reliability thing that this case talks about. They would have had to have brought someone in order to explain this. And I'll say again, Ferguson did deal with a situation where it was the medical test, and that makes sense to me, right? If they had run an alcohol test on the blood that they had and they had given us that record, sure, it's presumed that they followed all of their own procedures to get that record. This blood was drawn for different testing purposes. We don't know how it was preserved, or again, according to Mr. Boers at our suppression motion, this was considered throwaway blood. They were done with it. It had already served its purpose for the medical tests. So it's a very different situation. We can't just, if it's their burden under a 901 authentication rule, a chain of custody rule, and my right of confrontation so that I can investigate exactly what did go wrong here. It was their burden to explain this or to present proper evidence. In Ferguson, there were no errors. There were no errors on any of the blood. That the records matched the date of birth, which matched, and that's what that case talks about, matched all of the numbers on the records themselves. Randy's birth date on those medical records is actually 10/28/1979 at the top. And throughout the middle, they're saying 50-year-old man. How this got switched or when, that's left unanswered. That makes these inherently unreliable. State v. Singh is the other case that he was talking about as far as chain of custody issues. That's a little bit different because in those cases, the blood draw is witnessed by the officer. The person who draws it is actually on the certificate. And part of what Singh talks about is an investigating officer testifies that he or she watched the blood draw and received a sample from a nurse or phlebotomist. I don't know who drew this. I don't know if it's a nurse. I don't know if it's a phlebotomist. I don't know what kind of training they had. I don't know what their procedures are. And again, back to the order of the blood draw. That's what I said. That's actually a motion pending in Judge Stillman's court right now. That Mr. Satterfield could not testify that the person who drew the blood did these in the correct order. I have a right to question them on that and explain to them why. He told you that it's because there are chemicals in these different color top tubes that can get mixed up.
What do you think the difference is between an officer watching a hospital staff member draw the blood versus the staff member testified today, Mr. Satterfield, that he watched either a nurse or respiratory therapist?
He didn't say he watched. He said that's usually what happens. He couldn't state today who it was. He said usually it's a nurse or respiratory therapist. And I said, you can't say for sure in this case that happened because you don't know who it was.
My recollection of the back testimony that he was drawn in his presence. He doesn't recall exactly who did it on that day, but he could say that it was usually the nurse or respiratory.
Right, usually. That's usually what he sees is what he said.
But still drawn in his presence. So it would have been either the nurse or the respiratory therapist. But he just doesn't recall which person he observed drawn. That was my recollection of testimony. Do you have a different recollection?
The recollection was that he said it's usually one of those two.
My recollection is that it was either that. He wasn't sure whether it was the nurse or the respiratory tech. I also know the only other person who said was around the patient was.
In any event, he still couldn't state that the draw was done in the correct order. He didn't even remember the correct order, so he couldn't have been the person to have, what's the word I'm looking for, indicated that that was done correctly. They would have to have someone here that indicated that was done correctly, as in Mr. Brown's case, where the nurse who drew the blood actually did it incorrectly, which is why they had that motion. I don't even know if I have that motion because I don't know if it was done correctly because I don't even know who drew it. And I don't even have the right to ask that person questions because I don't know who drew it. And they're listed in the medical records as a number.
Let's see. All right. I'd like to hear what actually specifically testified to. So,
Okay, that makes sense.
so when we get to the back up where Thomas Satterfield was testifying about the blood drawn from the defendant, I'd like to know if it was in his presence, he's in the same room, specifically it was.
I think I asked specifically, do you know who? I think she's right. I asked, do you know who? And he said it would have been.
I'd like to listen to
Yes, sir. Of course. I'm sorry.
Michael Ford is 69. Thomas Sackey. Michael Stevens. Yeah, right before.
It's switched screen time, so it's not showing. The blood was drawn from his presence. I do recall notes when he crosses in with him. He doesn't. Back up there. I do have notes of your specific question about, or he doesn't know specifically who drew the blood or that recall. He doesn't know specifically what's used that day, but it's a oral prep, and it's usually the nerve support respiratory therapies. So I interpreted his testimony as he was standing there when it was drawn.
Sure.
It doesn't recall specifically whether it was the nurse or respiratory therapist. Either one of those were the roles people who usually do the blood. So it seems like the hospital protocols, the usual protocols were followed.
Maybe. But again, when I've got an error in an unreliable, because in Ferguson, everything matched, these don't match, I don't have a way to find a respiratory therapist or a nurse that was standing there to ask that question of. That was their burden, not mine, to hunt that person down so I could ask these questions. If all of this matched, I might agree with you that it's reliable. Again, in Ferguson, there are numbers on these that line up. There's not a social security number on here. I just need these to Mr. Vega. It's not on here. And I still have one with a random name and not the other, and he couldn't explain that. There are things that should have been followed up with because these records do not match, because this birth date is completely incorrect. Therefore, the addition of reliability that case that case is relying on doesn't exist here. It's basically been rebutted.
It seems to me that someone's birthday or name or spelling of a last name or even race sometimes could be mistakenly put in incorrectly. Doesn't seem like that's apples come out blood that's drawn from that. It doesn't seem like to be, is the blood in my hand that was handed to me from the nurse through the blood from Randy Vega, or could it be from someone else? It seems like there's circumstantially that would be less opportunity for a mistake to be made. What are your thoughts on that?
I have no idea why this is wrong. And again, if someone had come in to testify, yeah, it was me, it was a typo. It's not even close, right? If we're one number off, I mean, his birthday is 10/28/79. This is June 28th, 1978. Where did that come from? How? Or were you doing two at a time? And that's what got crisscrossed? I mean, and the testimony was from all parties that it is very important to get this right. That's why we have two separate wristbands. That's why we scan it. That's why I have someone that takes these records. They're relying on every other piece of this to authenticate it, but asking us to ignore the one thing that makes it not authenticatable. That just doesn't seem fair. And again, without bringing someone in to explain that was a typo, I think that they have not met a burden of proper authentication.
Anything else you want to argue? Anything you want to argue about this stage? I tend to agree with General Boards that as far as there's any contaminants, you'll be able to ask the actual TGAT animals about that.
So here's the problem. She wouldn't know what happened. So back to we talked about it. I didn't get a court ruling, so I guess I need a ruling. Again, my other confrontation issue here is because I don't know who drew the blood. I cannot verify whether these were drawn in the proper order. There are procedures, as was testified to by these DUI officers, as to how a forensic test is supposed to be drawn, all the things that they're supposed to do. We have testimony, we have something in evidence that says that with these colored tops, there were actually 4 drawn, only 2 came. There is an order by which they have to be drawn for the purpose of not cross-contaminating the different chemicals within them. That is their procedure. That is how that is properly done. He said, I can't remember the order. I know I learned it. I know it exists. I can't remember what it was. And I said, so of course today you can't state that these were drawn in the proper order. And he said, I couldn't. So the one person that could is the person who drew that blood. I don't get to investigate that. I don't get to ask that question. This may or may not have been properly drawn according to their own procedures. Had they brought the person in who actually drew the blood as opposed to Mr. Satterfield, that'd be taken care of. I would be able to ask that question of that person and be able to ask them specifically and close that inquiry, that indicia of reliability. I'm unable to do so today. I've been denied my right of confrontation as to that issue, as to the reliability and this blood being proper. So maybe we should address that one too before I move on.
All right, you want to respond to that issue? Do you think haven't said yet?
Your Honor, what I would submit is, I do think that Ferguson actually addresses Ms. Hayden's concerns regarding basically, was this done properly? Were these contaminated? Was there cross-contamination? They actually discuss, this is at page 24 of the opinion, and I do want to be clear, Ferguson involves this scenario where they went and got blood from the hospital. This is not just medical records from Ferguson. I think that's been said before, but quoting from page 24 of the opinion, Special Agents Tiller and Thompson testified extensively regarding the condition of the blood samples when they received them and the dangers that result from contaminating and failing to properly store the samples. Special Agent Tiller stated that he did not note any issues with clotting or bacterial growth in the samples. Special Agent Tiller likewise stated that he did not observe anything abnormal in the blood samples and that he took precautions to ensure that the testing instrument did not produce a result that was based on any contamination of blood samples. The point here, Your Honor, that I'm making is I think Ms. Hayden's arguments go more towards the weight of the evidence than it does the admissibility. I believe that if and when Agent Kelly testifies as to her observations regarding the testing, if there were errors in its collection to the point where they affected the viability of the sample, then that can be borne out in cross-examination, Your Honor. The other thing I'll note is that Mr. Satterfield testified in his experience that he's never seen a hospital add ethyl alcohol to a sample.
Wouldn't suggest they were. This I'm sorry, were you done talking?
Yes.
Something that comes to mind is Candida albicans, right? It's a specific yeast that contaminates blood from time to time that the TBI doesn't test for. That's not something she would know. That's something that can happen when you've got multiple pipettes coming into these blood vials in a medical place. And again, we don't know how many different tests were run on this blood before it was sent to TBI. Again, we don't know how it was stored. If it's warm, because it's not refrigerated, because again, this blood was not intended to be stored for forensic purposes down the road. We all know that forensic blood gets tested sometimes months later. And so they have certain preservatives, certain anticoagulants. They are refrigerated. They do have chain of custody. They do have signing them in and out. There are procedures in place for that type of thing. That's not what happens here. And I'll say this again, it's not necessarily a contamination of these chemicals. It was proper procedure followed. That comes before even contamination. And I don't get to ask the question. I don't get to we're all speculating as to what could or couldn't happen when this isn't done right. I should be able to ask the person that question and verify why that process is in place, whether it was followed, and I've been denied that ability. Yes, sir.
I'd be fine that testimony by Mr. Satterfield does satisfy the requirement about there being no tampering, loss of substance, with the drawing of the blood. Sure, testified that he was a patient care tech employee of Erlanger, that he was working capacity that day. That blood specifically was drawn in his presence. I do think blood being drawn in the presence of someone of Mr. Satterfield's role does satisfy the analysis that's laid out in the purpose of the opinion. I do think that while it might have been, there clearly was a mistake made initially with Mr. Vega's birthday that never questioned Mr. Satterfield's testimony about how it was in his presence that it would have called, did not recall the role of the person, that it was the usual course of practice for nurse and respiratory therapy all to be the case in this, at this particular time. I understand you took it to the lab with Erlanger, considered to, as this case talks about, have an interest in making sure that it's properly drawn. So then it picks up with Officer Perez picking it up from Erlanger as well. So I do think that regarding chain of custody, there, evidence just has to be sufficient to ensure court satisfaction. There's been no tampering, loss, substitution, or mistake with respect to blood sample being drawn from this particular. So at this point, Taylor objection to chain of custody is what we're doing. As far as admissibility of the test, you can renew your objection if you want after agent testifies. The other part of your argument, there was testing done at Erlanger, determined with pets being added, with other substances perhaps being added, subject to cross-examination. Feel free to renew your objection.
Does the court's ruling include the fact that we don't know how this blood was stored after it was drawn? So certainly Mr. Satterfield seems to have satisfied the court's as to my argument about the chain of custody, but he said he walked it to the lab, and I specifically asked him, you don't know what happened to it after that? He said, I don't know. We know Perez got there a couple days later, but we don't know what happened to it while it was sitting there. So in Ferguson, again, they did make a side note about it. Makes us wonder if they would have to chain of custody for the blood itself. If that was a case where they had a test run there.
I do agree that that the witness's testimony was more direct and that the blood was drawn in his presence. This one was less so. However, I think the language in the Ferguson opinion about crucial life and death decisions by hospital personnel recommend proper obtaining, handling, and preserving of blood samples. So I do think that would probably cover the lab that he dropped it off at a hospital. So yes, I do think that based on what we have, the state wants to call someone from the lab to talk about that. The way that it's sometimes done with evidence, property or intent issue, certainly can, but I don't think that's necessary based on the deference that's given by this court, the Ferguson court, on preserving of blood samples.
Okay, and as to the 901 argument that these two samples have not been properly authenticated because we have no explanation as to why Randy Vega 6/28/1978 is on this blood when Randy Vega is sitting here is 10/28/1979.
May I note one thing, Your Honor? Both of the samples also indicate when the sample was drawn, which correlates with what's in the medical records and what Mr. Satterfield testified to. It's the 16-17 timestamp.
Sure, there's a time.
Or as far as authenticating it, I think testimony of witness knowledge we had as far as the blood that was specifically from the actual blood that was drawn for Mr. Vega in conjunction with the medical records and the deference that's given in the Ferguson opinion. I do think that has been properly authenticated as the blood from Randy Vega made it to the lab that Officer Perez could.
Okay, and then as to my right of confrontation, where I don't have a witness to question about the proper procedures as far as the order, whether an alcohol swab was used or whether it was betadine, there's a reason. Forensic testing for alcohol, those have betadine swabs, not alcohol. He said he didn't know it was used, but he said probably alcohol. When I say he, I'm speaking of Satterfield.
Again, Ferguson talked that very thing about police. Did not call someone from the hospital for those types of things, but the language seems to do that in terms of chain of custody. That would cover the confrontation clause argument as well. That the hospital has a vested interest in preserving, screening, and testing properly the evidence that they draw from the defendant so that flows to obtain and preserve blood sample.
Okay. And the court finds that that presumption of reliability that the hospital has in doing all these things right was not rebutted by the incorrect record.
It's not rebutted by mistaken birth date, how many other information, and it was corrected. It's correct.
We don't have anything in the record showing it was corrected. There was a,
I think the medical,
that was,
record now showed that Mr. Vega indicated that his proper birthday was, that the birthday was improper and that steps were taken to put proper information on the record.
It specifically says they scanned his ID.
there was a note in there that I'm arguing is hearsay before this court today, that while that record comes in as a business record, that statement of what happened was hearsay without that live witness here to explain it. Yes, there's a notation that several days after he had been there, that he brought that to her attention, but that is not properly before the court as evidence because there's not a live witness to say that.
It's not a record of regularly conducted activity in the sense that when a hospital finds that corrections need to be made, that they make them. It's my understanding of general, would you like to add anything to that?
The only other thing I'd say is that should have been objected to contemporaneously with the record submission. It was not. And as to Mr. Vega's notification of the staff that was incorrect, that would be a statement from part of the comment.
All right, anything else to say?
Yes, as to the forensic draw, Singh does state, and our own statutory procedures do state that the person who drew the blood has to be one of any number of qualifying people. Ryan Lynn did not testify who it was that drew the blood. So he forgot that part of what happened. He said, yeah, I watched it. Yeah, it looked normal. Yeah, it was in procedure, but we don't know who that was. So the state has not closed that gap in proving to the court to get that in that it was a qualified person under the statute. Ryan Lynn is who witnessed the state trial.
Would that be any different than Mr. Satterfield testifying that the blood was drawn in his presence?
It's different because statutorily, so again, medical is a whole nother thing, right? They don't have the same rules because it's not done for forensic purposes, which is half my problem with this. In the forensic world, we actually, in our statute, it actually lists who is able to draw blood for these blood tests to be admissible. And there's a list of all sorts of different people that can do so. I'm not saying it's hard for them to prove it. I'm saying he didn't say who did it and they didn't close that gap.
Your Honor, we can easily address this issue. Officer Lynn is right out the hall, so states have to recall him. States not close his proof.
Is that what you want to do?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you want, I can rule on this if you want to. If you want to call.
If the court would like to rule, and depending on the court's ruling, then I could recall Officer Lynn.
It seems to me that while there may be a difference in some ways as far as Mr. Lynn's purpose, as far as being testimonial, I guess, for the case, it seems like being drawn in his presence would, by hospital staff, would cover that. But
I don't know that.
I guess to be safe, it's probably better for you to call.
Yes, sir, we can do that. The issue is I just, Adrian, I cannot remember what type of hospital staff he said or if he did, but I'm happy to recall he's just out in the hallway, so.
Before we do that, Your Honor, Ms. Hayden, do you have any further objections apart from who drew the blood?
As to the forensic test,
Yes, ma'am.
I do not.
Your Honor, do you have any objection to taking 2-minute restroom?
No.
family here, Lynn?
She's learning.
Hello, how are you? You okay?
Oh, yeah, good.
Feel free. Your seats are open whenever you want to sit.
I think actually I might go home early. I'm so tired from yesterday, so I thank you for the offer though.
Okay, all right, see you soon.
See ya.
Megan almost came, Judge.
Oh, yeah?
Not Megan.
Come on up.
She had a babysitting job and conflicted.
She can't bring it back.
Sorry, no.
Second floor, maybe.
Do I?
On the second floor, maybe. I hear that's pretty regular.
Yeah. Nobody, she wouldn't stick out there.
Okay, I think it's almost the same I can hear.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think that's oversimplification. Hey, Sean.
Yeah.
There's so much information.
They see the come to order for the back session.
Yeah, or
He's been like.
Your Honor, the state recalls Officer Ryan Lindsay.
Testimony about taking the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Have a proceed, Your Honor. Welcome back, sir.
Yes, sir.
Had a couple of follow-up questions for you. So you've testified, I'm quickly moving forward to the point where we have a couple of questions. You testified previously that you executed a search warrant on November 25th, 2023 for a sample of Randy Vega's blood, correct?
Yes,
And that was done at the hospital?
it was
Which hospital?
earlier.
Okay. You personally witnessed this blood draw, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Do you recall the type of person that withdrew the blood, that drew the blood sample? Were they being a staff member, something along those lines?
no, in that point, it would have been a blood nurse that we have on contract with the city.
Okay. So a blood nurse on contract with the city, that is somebody that is obviously, well, blood nurse trained in drawing the samples. Is that correct?
Yes,
And so it's your testimony today, a blood nurse withdrew the sample and that is the sample that you collected. And then we move forward with the rest of the testimony that you previously gave.
that's correct.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for coming back.
Do you know who?
I don't know if it's her legal first name, but her name is Lindsay Kennemore.
And how do you know that?
Just from experience of working alongside her for years.
Not what her name is. How do you know that she was the one that drew the blood that day?
I was there. And she's the only one that we have on contract.
So it's a memory of yours
Yes, ma'am.
from 2.5 years ago?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is it
She's the
written?
only one that we've never had on contract since, we used to have a separate company, and then she's the one that's been on our contract.
Okay. Is her name on any paperwork anywhere?
It should be on the toxicology report request form.
Yes. Do you have that with you?
I do not.
Thank you.
You redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you, Officer Wynn.
State calls Kayla Kelly. And may I have prosecution backstop, please?
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
See, so I will fulfill it here.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Please state your name and spell your last, please.
My name is Kayla Kelly, and last name is Kelley.
Ms. Kelly, are you employed?
Yes, I'm employed at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation in the Nashville Crime Lab, specifically in the toxicology unit.
And ma'am, have you ever heard the phrase curriculum vitae?
Yes, I have.
What's that?
It's kind of like a resume.
All right. Do you have one?
I do.
Ma'am, I'm going to show you a document and ask you to recognize it.
Yes, this is a true and accurate copy of my CV.
Does it reflect your education, training, qualifications, and so on?
Yes, it does.
This one I've asked this on the, I forget what number it was.
74.
Exhibit 74. And may I retrieve exhibit 74?
Yes, sir.
What is your educational background?
I have a bachelor's of science in chemistry with a concentration in forensic science that I obtained from Austin Peay State University.
After you obtained your degree, where did you go to work?
I worked at a privately owned toxicology lab called Aegis Sciences Corporation for 10 years. There I did similar instrumentation and methodology that I do at TBI.
Okay. You've said similar to what you do at TBI, but what is it that you did at that organization?
I also tested biological samples. We did more pain comp rather than forensics, but it was the same principles.
Do you belong to any professional organizations?
Yes, I belong to an organization called the Society of Forensic Toxicologists, and I'm a current and active member.
When did you become an employee of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation?
I was hired at TBI in October of 2022, and so it's been about 3.5 years now.
What is it specifically that you do for them?
So again, I work in the toxicology unit, and my main duties are I analyze biological fluids such as blood and urine for the presence or absence of alcohol and other impairing substances. I will report those findings, and then I will testify to those findings in court.
Have you ever heard the phrase forensic toxicology?
Yes, I have.
What is that?
So forensics just means it applies to the law, and the toxicology is a study of toxins and poisons within the body.
And can you be more specific as to what a forensic scientist in the toxicology unit does at TBI?
Yeah, so I am analyzing, again, biological fluids such as blood and urine, and I'm looking for any substances that could be impairing to an individual. Most of the cases we work are DUI related, and so I'm looking for either alcohol or any other drugs that could cause impairing effects.
Did you, apart from your bachelor's that we talked about, did you have to receive any sort of training to hold that role?
Yes, I went through an extensive training program through TBI. It lasted a little over 6 months. Within that training, I had to do multiple competency tests. And a competency test is basically where my training officer would provide me samples that she knew the results. I would have to perform the methods to retrieve those results, and then she would verify that I got those results correct, and I did successfully pass those. I also had to do multiple presentations involving the instrumentation, the methodology, and the pharmacology of alcohol, and had to present that to multiple toxicologists across the state. And I had to do other trainings that involved just repeat analysis of making sure that I was able to successfully and accurately provide samples or provide the results that the samples were. I was able to successfully pass my training to the satisfaction of my training officer, my quality assurance manager, and my technical supervisor.
Once you were fully trained up, were you permitted to conduct analysis on your own?
Yes, I was.
Okay. How many times a day would you say you do that on a normal shift?
How many samples?
Yes, ma'am.
Cases? I would say typically in a month I would do anywhere between 180 cases to 270.
Okay. So fair to say you've probably done this thousands of times at this point.
Yeah, I would say it's safe to say over 2,000 times for sure.
The method that you use to do that, can you just give a very brief overview of how you would analyze a sample for the presence or absence of drugs or alcohol?
So alcohol testing, I will take a small portion of the blood from the blood tubes that we've received. I'll put it in a clean glass vial. I will cap that vial, and then I'm going to run that vial along with a set of quality controls that I have to run with every batch that I do on our instrumentation. And that instrumentation is going to tell me one of two very important things. It's going to tell me if there's anything in there, and then it's going to tell me how much is in there. And for alcohols, we actually have to do that whole process twice.
To your knowledge, this technique that you're applying, is that generally accepted within the scientific community?
Yes, the method as well as the instrumentation that we use for alcohol analysis is considered the gold standard, and it's used all over the country as well as all over the world.
Ma'am, switching gears a little bit, I'm referring to your CV, which was previously exhibited as Exhibit 74. On that CV, it says that in May of 2024, you attended the Robert F. Borkenstein course of alcohol and highway safety. What's that?
So the Robert F. Borkenstein course on alcohol and highway safety is a week-long course that forensic toxicologists like myself are able to attend. And what it is focusing on is specifically alcohol and how it affects the human brain and the body, and how those effects can impair or affect a person's ability to operate motor vehicles safely.
Are you educated as to the physical manifestations of alcohol impairment?
Yes.
Are you educated as to how alcohol impairs the brain and a person's thought process?
Yes.
Are you educated as to how those issues relate to a person's driving behavior?
Yes.
Okay. On several occasions on your CV, it says that you participated in or observed controlled alcohol or field sobriety studies. What are those?
So those are also called either drinking studies or wet labs, and that is where an agency, I did it through the Tennessee Highway Patrol, but it's where an agency will provide, usually for their new cadets, a chance for them to perform or practice their standardized field sobriety test, and I participated as one of the drinkers. And so what they do is they'll actually dose you to a specific BAC, and then that gives the cadets an opportunity to actually see what it looks like for an individual to be under the influence of alcohol.
What are you observing or learning at that study?
So when I'm participating, one of the things I thought was really interesting was to understand how I'm feeling personally and what that relates to the actual BAC, because they have breathalyzers on site. So it's kind of interesting to understand what I'm feeling internally and connect that with the BAC that I'm actually seeing. I also had a chance to just observe on one of the chances of the opportunities that I got to go. So I didn't drink at all, I just observed. And again, it was just an opportunity for me to see the sort of outward effects of alcohol on individuals who have been dosed to a specific BAC.
Okay. Under the list of technical skills on your CV, you list the phrase, quote, human performance forensic toxicology. What is that?
So that's just sort of a catch-all phrase that we will relate to all of the toxicology testing that has to do with humans and how they're able to perform tasks such as driving or other tasks along those natures.
Where did you learn about that?
That was through multiple different factions of either the internal training that I had at TBI, as well as the Borkenstein course, as well as courses that I took through the Society of Forensic Toxicology that I'm also a part of, and other readings.
You mentioned readings. As part of your employment, are you required to keep up with the scientific literature in your field?
Yes, so being part of the Society of Forensic Toxicologists, or SOFT for short, we receive numerous articles that we will keep in contact or keep up to date with the comings and goings of toxicology. We also share all the information from toxicologists to toxicologists throughout the state.
Specifically in those articles, have you familiarized yourself with materials on human performance as it relates to alcohol?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Have you ever testified in court before?
Yes, I have.
How many times?
This will be my 9th time.
In those occasions, were you qualified as an expert witness?
Every time.
Okay. Where? Do you know what jurisdictions you were in?
Mostly it was Middle Tennessee. Some of the counties were Williamson, Humphreys, Rutherford are a few of the ones.
Never out here in Hamilton, though?
Never in Hamilton. This is my first time.
Okay. In what fields were you qualified as an expert witness?
I was qualified as an expert in forensic toxicology, specifically to how alcohol affects an individual and how those effects can impair a person's ability to operate a motor vehicle.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd tender the witness as an expert witness in the field of forensic toxicology and the effects of alcohol on human beings. Ma'am, I'd like to direct your attention to TBI lab case number 231021148. Are you familiar with that case?
Yes, I am.
What was your role in that case?
I analyzed the blood samples that were received at the laboratory for the presence or absence of alcohol.
I want to talk to you about what happens when a blood sample is received by TBI. Can you tell the jury a little bit about that process?
So once a blood sample or a blood kit is received from TBI, it goes through our evidence processing. So one of our evidence technicians who have been properly trained and qualified to process our kits will open the kits. They will document all the information that's on the request form that was received. They'll take photos of those tubes and they'll put all of that information into our laboratory information management system. And when they do that, it's going to do two very important things. It's going to generate this unique laboratory identification number, and it's also going to start our chain of custody.
And chain of custody is just what happens with the sample while TBI has it?
Yeah, it's just a record of where the sample is at within the laboratory, and it gives a specific date and time.
Once the samples are logged in, are they refrigerated?
Yes, they are.
Why?
So with any biological sample, it's good to preserve it as best as you can, and the way to do that is through refrigeration.
Okay. If a sample were not refrigerated, what effects, if any, could that have?
So for these types of blood tubes, there is a preservative within the blood tube, and it's really good at preserving the integrity of the sample. If the blood tube was not refrigerated, what would happen is if there is any alcohol in the tube itself, you would potentially lose some alcohol that might be in there.
So in other words, the number, if there was a blood alcohol concentration, the number would actually get lower if it was not refrigerated.
It's possible that that could happen.
When you receive a sample, do you assess the sample for viability for testing?
Yes, so one of the first things I do is once I obtain custody of the blood tube, I will make sure that all the information that's on the blood tube matches what's in the request form, as well as what's in our internal management system. And then once I'm ready to actually begin testing, when I physically remove part of the blood sample from the blood tube, I'll make any notations about the blood itself. So if there's clots or if it's got a weird color or weird odor, I'll make note of it. And so for this case, I didn't have any notations for this.
Are you able to observe whether there's signs of contamination of the sample?
When it comes to with contamination specifically,
Just to the point where a sample would be degraded or otherwise unavailable for testing?
Like I said, with the bloods themselves, if I notice that kind of being anything out of the ordinary, so clots or weird colors, I'll make notes, and I didn't make any notes for this case.
What is ethyl alcohol?
Ethyl alcohol is also known as drinking alcohol, so it's the alcohol that would be within the alcoholic beverages that you would consume.
Have you ever heard of rubbing alcohol?
Yes, I have.
Is that a different kind of alcohol than ethyl?
It is. It's also called isopropyl alcohol.
Does isopropyl alcohol show up differently on your testing than ethyl would?
Yes, so I'm not only looking for ethyl alcohol, which is the drinking alcohol, I'm looking for a couple other alcohols, and isopropyl alcohol is part of the testing that we do, so I would see it if it is present.
Ma'am, I'm going to direct your attention to the screen behind you, okay? And I'm going to show you some pictures and ask you if you recognize what's in them. These are previously admitted exhibits, okay? Do you know what that is?
Yes, that is one of the blood tubes that I received to test.
Okay. Are these the same tubes?
Yes, just rotated.
And this?
Yes, that was the second set of blood tubes that we received that I also tested.
You testified that your job is to perform analysis of these samples to determine whether or not there's alcohol or drugs in them, correct?
Correct.
Did you do that in this case?
I just did the alcohol testing, but yes, I did perform testing on both on one of the gray topper tubes and the purple top tube that you saw in the pictures.
Okay. Why the purple top?
So for that one, that the purple top and the gray top, or the green top or whatever the other color that was in the picture, those were received at the same time, so those were admitted as one exhibit. And as a toxicologist, we have the option to test a whole blood sample versus a plasma serum sample. We're going to test the whole blood, and that's what the purple top was a whole blood sample.
Why do you want to test whole blood instead of serum?
So serum is mostly water, and whole blood is going to give you a better idea of what the true blood alcohol content. We can test plasma serum for blood alcohol, but there is a conversion factor that we would have to do. So if we have the choice, we'll always stick with the whole blood option.
So I don't believe I specifically asked you, but did you test these samples for the presence or absence of alcohol?
Yes, I did.
And did you yield any results?
Yes, I did.
Are you required by statute to document your findings?
Yes.
Did you produce a report in this case?
Yes, I did.
Ma'am, I'm going to show you two reports. The top one, I'm going to ask you to recognize that.
Yes, it is a true and accurate copy of my alcohol report.
And at this point, I moved this to evidence. I think it's 75.
It's 75.
And Your Honor, through my conversations with the defense counsel, well, let me ask this, ma'am, is it common for TBI to also test samples for the presence or absence of drugs in addition to alcohol?
Yeah, so depending on the type of case that we get, if it's anything more than a typical DUI, so if it involves a death or if it involves a sexual assault, or if it's requested by an AD or something like that, we'll do additional testing no matter what the alcohol content is.
Even though you didn't perform it, to your knowledge, was that done in this case?
Yes, it was.
I believe through stipulation or written drug test is 76.
Correct, John.
Just right off the jump, I'm going to hand you Exhibit 76. Were there any drugs in Mr. Vegas' system?
This was not one of my reports, but from looking at one of my coworkers' reports, which is what I'm looking at right now, there was not any drugs detected.
You have in front of you a copy of your alcohol report?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'm going to be working off the screen behind you, but obviously you've got the same report in front of you. Okay. So the first thing that I noticed about your report is that the samples, they're listed as exhibits 1, 2, and 3. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And below those, there's a field that's titled collected for each sample.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Where and is there a timestamp on there?
For each sample?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, there is.
Okay. Where do you get that information?
So it depends. Usually we will use, or I will use the information that's on the request form that's also submitted with the blood tubes. There are there are situations where if the information isn't on the request form, I will refer to the physical blood tubes and pull any information from that.
Am I correct in understanding that based on your report, sample 2 was actually collected first in time?
That is correct.
Okay. That's what I'd like to talk to you about first. Okay. And to be clear, is sample 2 pictured in this photograph here?
Yes, specifically the purple top tube is number 2.
In your experience, is that a tube that typically comes from a hospital?
Yes.
All right. So talking specifically about sample 2, what result did you reach?
So for exhibit 2, I found ethyl alcohol at an amount of 0.131 grams per cent.
Is that result to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes, it is.
Okay. The analysis that you performed on the sample, is that the same sort of analysis that we previously talked about?
Yes, it is.
Okay. My question to you is, between sample 2 and sample 1, approximately how much time elapsed between the collection of those samples?
I would say approximately 3 hours.
Okay. Moving along to section sample 2, is this sample 1 behind you?
Yes, that is exhibit 1.
And did you reach a result in that case?
Yes, I did.
What was the result?
The result for that one was, again, ethyl alcohol at 0.087 grams per cent.
So 3 hours after the first one, it's at 0.087%.
That's correct.
With these two BACs, one being higher and one being lower, is that consistent with anything in your experience?
Yes, so when you are drinking alcohol, you go through multiple phases. There's a phase called absorption, which is where your blood alcohol content is getting higher. And then you reach what we call peak. So that's the highest your blood alcohol content is going to get once you finish drinking for the session. And then after it peaks, it's going to start decreasing. So we call that the elimination phase. And so it is common to see 2 results like this where one is higher and one is lower. That would indicate to me that this individual was in the elimination phase, so their blood alcohol content was decreasing.
Does that mean that they drank some time in the past and it's had time to calm down?
Yes.
Okay. One thing I want to note is I've read your case file and I can't help but notice that both of these samples were subject to a retest. Is that correct?
That is also correct.
Okay. Why was that?
So for forensic reporting, specifically with alcohol, since we're giving a value, there are a large and a long set of rules and policies that I have to follow before I can confidently give a result. And so if any of those rules aren't met, it will trigger me to do a retest. And it's something that it does happen in the forensic world, not only in TBI, but across the country of all the toxicology worlds. And so I did have to do a retest for these samples. And I wouldn't report any findings if I wasn't confident in my results. And all of my reports are also reviewed by another scientist. So they also have to agree with my results before the report is released.
Okay. When you have to retest a sample, would you basically start from scratch?
Yeah, I start the entire process from the very beginning of where I fill the physical blood tubes, I get a fresh small sample from that blood tube, and I do the entire process all over again.
Would your need to retest a sample indicate that there is something wrong with the viability of the blood sample itself?
No, not the physical blood sample itself.
So it's an error that occurred after you pipetted the blood?
That's correct.
Okay. When you retest a sample, do you alter the tubes you receive from the police in any way, shape, or form?
I do not.
Okay. Do you add anything to them?
I do not.
Do you take any steps to ensure that you do not contaminate those tubes?
Yes. So one of the tools that we use to retrieve the specific amount of blood that I have to use for testing, I get a fresh. So one of the tools is called a pipette, and it's basically like a very accurate turkey baster. And so on the tip of that pipette or the turkey baster, I have to get a fresh tip. And so it's just this little plastic piece that I get between each sample, and I always get a fresh one between every sample.
Bottom line, is any step that you would have taken that would have made any change to the amount of alcohol in the sample?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The steps that you took, would any of those steps have changed the amount of alcohol in Mr. Vega's blood samples?
No, none of that would have changed.
Would you publish your reports if you had any doubt at all as to the accuracy of your testing?
I would not.
Are these results given with a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes, they are.
Ma'am, earlier you talked a little bit about absorption and elimination. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you talk to me a little bit more? How is alcohol absorbed into your system?
So alcohol is typically taken through the mouth, and it will enter the stomach. A little bit of absorption happens in the stomach, but the majority of what the alcohol is going to absorb is actually in your small intestines. And when we say absorb, that means it's leaving the GI system and is actually entering the blood system. And so once it's in your blood, that means it's actually being circulated all over your body, which means it's going to get to your brain. So again, the absorption phase is just when alcohol is leaving the GI system and entering into the blood.
Fair to say this process takes some time.
Yeah, so usually what we say is after the last beverage has been consumed, it takes anywhere between 30 minutes to 60 minutes for all of the alcohol to be completely absorbed.
And in the meantime, if the alcohol is still sitting in the stomach, that's not going to be reflected in somebody's BAC.
Yes, if there's alcohol still in the stomach, the alcohol that's in the blood doesn't reflect what's actually still in the stomach. Yes.
I want to ask you a hypothetical question, okay? If somebody were to vomit before their alcohol in their stomach is absorbed, would that alcohol that was vomited out be reflected in their blood alcohol content?
It would not. So the stomach is kind of like a holding cell for alcohol. So until it gets to the small intestines, it won't be absorbed, except for just a very small percentage of it.
If that person had not vomited, would their BAC have eventually gone even higher?
It's possible. It depends on how much alcohol is still in the stomach, as well as how much food is in the stomach, because that can also affect how fast the absorption does occur.
Going to back to your training at Borkenstein and in human performance, I want to ask you a question. So you've given us this BAC of 0.131 in sample number 2. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. In your opinion, is somebody vomiting consistent with being at that BAC?
It is possible at that level.
Okay. Can you tell me what, if any, effects that BAC might have on somebody's judgment?
Yes, so individuals with this level of blood alcohol content can experience issues with their critical judgment. And so what that could look like is, let's say you're driving down the road and a deer jumps out in front of your car. Critical judgment is what you use to decide, do I have enough time to stop or do I have enough time to swerve? And then what do I do to either avoid the deer or avoid hitting oncoming traffic or the
And to be clear, that's making that judgment worse, not better.
That's correct.
Okay. Would a person be more or less likely to take risks at this BAC?
They're more likely to take riskier choices. So alcohol is what we call a central nervous system depressant. And what that means is it's going to slow down the communication from your brain to your body and your body back to your brain. And so again, that critical judgment as well as the riskier things are all being slowed down in terms of how your brain is communicating to the rest of your body.
How would this BAC affect somebody's inhibitions?
Very.
Let me rephrase that. Have you ever heard the phrase liquid courage?
Yes, I have.
What does that mean?
So liquid courage is referring to, usually it gives people the courage to do things that they may not typically do, and that's what alcohol can do. So if maybe somebody isn't comfortable getting on stage to karaoke, usually if they drink a little bit of alcohol, it gives them that liquid courage to actually do that.
Moving on, what effects, if any, could this BAC have on somebody's emotional stability?
Yeah, so at higher levels of alcohol, like this 0.131, you could see somebody who has what I like to call emotional instability. And so you may see people who are extremely happy or extremely sad, and they may switch really fast. So they may be really happy one second, and then they might get really angry all of a sudden, and then they may switch back to being sad. So it's kind of all over the place.
What about drowsiness? Would that be consistent?
Yes, drowsiness is a pretty common effect with alcohol.
In your opinion, would somebody rapidly changing from being drowsy and calm to alert and angry be consistent with this BAC?
It is possible at this BAC.
How does alcohol affect your ability to operate a motor vehicle?
So alcohol affects what I call your divided attention task. And so driving is basically one giant divided attention task. So if you think back to when you're first learning how to drive, everything seemed a little bit overwhelming. So you had to check your mirrors, you had to check your speed, you had to kind of keep in mind what other drivers were doing on the road, maybe to the point where you're so overwhelmed you didn't even want the radio on. And then over time you get more comfortable learning how to do all those checks without even realizing you're doing it. And so when you introduce a CNS depressant like alcohol on board, your brain's having a harder time switching to all those tasks back and forth really quickly. And so you might have somebody who's really good at maintaining their speed, but you might see swerving or something like that with an individual who has alcohol on board.
Would alcohol affect somebody's reaction time?
Yes, so reaction time will be be affected where it's going to take you longer to react to something, especially if it's unexpected.
Would alcohol affect a driver's ability to merge into traffic or change lanes?
Yes, it is possible that that will also be affected.
Positively or negatively?
Negative effect.
Why is that?
Again, with like the reaction time, it takes you longer to realize what's going on around you, as well as your critical judgment of, do I have enough space to actually make that change?
You said critical judgment about do I have enough space? Does alcohol affect your ability to, I guess, correctly judge whether or not you have enough space?
Yes, if it involves the critical judgment piece, then alcohol can affect that.
What about distance or timing? Does it have any effects on that?
It can also affect your judgment of how far something is too,
Positively or negatively?
negatively.
Bottom line, ma'am, in your opinion, would somebody at a BAC of 0.131 would their ability to their ability to operate a motor vehicle be impaired?
At a 0.131, yes, my opinion would be that they're too impaired to affect.
My same question is at 0.87.
Yes, above an 0.8, I would say they're too impaired to affect.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Ms. Kelly. I'm going to go backwards and start with what you were talking about. When you were being asked about all of the various ways that alcohol can affect the body, you used words like can and may and possible. And is that because alcohol does affect all bodies differently?
Yes, alcohol, especially at specific levels, can affect individuals differently. So you may see a specific effect at somebody at a 0.1 that you may not see in another individual. It's kind of a general way of saying how the effects are.
Can we talk about some of the things that might affect how alcohol, or that could have an effect on how alcohol affects the body? Does size matter? The size of the body?
For absorption, or are you talking about
For how alcohol affects you?
So size typically affects, size of an individual usually determines how much alcohol it takes to get to a certain amount of BAC. But I don't know about effects specifically.
How about tolerance?
Tolerance is possible for alcohol, but typically tolerance is going to affect the outward effects of alcohol. The parts of the brain, the critical judgment, the reaction time, the issues with divided attention tasks, those can't be masked by tolerance.
If I've got someone who drinks fairly regularly and someone that never drinks, is it true that at a 0.13, the regular drinker may be functioning more normally or more regularly than the person that's never drank due to tolerance of the person that does drink more regularly?
It is true. You could see those outward effects being a little bit more obvious in an individual who doesn't drink as often as the other one.
And different people react to alcohol differently based on their moods too, right? Or it affects people's moods differently.
Alcohol can affect, again, your emotional stability or instability. And so some people are really happy when they're drinking. Some people are really angry when they're drinking. So it does depend on the person specifically.
That's exactly where I was going. Some people do get very happy. Some people do get very sad. Some might end up angry, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have sudden mood swings. It depends on the person, right?
It's possible to see both, where you just see one emotion the whole time, or you can see the quick shift from one emotion to another emotion.
As far as absorption of alcohol goes, what affects the rate of absorption?
So absorption can be caused or changed by a number of things. It can be caused by genetics, it can be caused by food, it can be caused by weight, it can also be affected by if the individual had anything on their stomach or not as well.
So if someone had eaten a large meal while drinking or just prior to drinking, that alcohol is likely to absorb more slowly, right?
If they have food on the stomach?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So if food is on the stomach, it's going to take alcohol longer to absorb.
Okay. And you don't know for sure what phase Mr. Vega was in as far as drinking as far as the alcohol absorption at the time that you tested that blood, right?
I don't know for sure. What I do know is the alcohol amount that I had when I tested it, and that's what was on my report.
Correct. That's the alcohol amount that was in his blood at 4:17 p.m. for the first one and 7:30ish for the second one, right?
Yeah, at the time of blood draw. Yes.
Okay. And that would likely be different at the time of driving, right?
It's possible. Again, I don't know where this individual was at the time of driving. It all depends on all the factors that I unfortunately do not know.
Right. And a couple of obvious questions. You don't know Mr. Vega personally, do you?
I do not.
You don't have any information about his drinking habits, correct?
No, I don't.
You don't know how much he had to drink that night.
That's correct. I don't know.
You don't know when his last drink was.
I do not.
Okay. And all of those things could affect how that 0.13 was affecting his body, right?
All those things affect how quickly the alcohol is actually absorbed into the system.
And you can't state with any certainty what his blood alcohol level was at the time that he was driving a vehicle, right?
Not at the time of driving. What I do know is at the time of blood draw, which is what I tested.
Yes, ma'am. That's all I have. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Thank you for being here.
Ma'am, you were asked several questions that basically boiled down to this. You did not see Mr. Vega on the date of November 25th of 2023.
That's correct.
You made no personal observations of him?
I did not know.
And in your opinion, would it be reasonably scientific for you to opine as to his specific state if you did not make those observations?
I'm sorry, can you?
Would you feel comfortable opining on how he was with certainty if you had not seen him in person?
I could opine on what could have been possible at the time of the incident, but since I wasn't there, I'm not sure what he was involved with.
So in your opinion, would it be best to watch observations of Mr. Vega and compare that to see whether or not the symptoms you talked about were present?
Yeah, so all the effects that I talk about, especially the outward effects, are general. So it's going to come down to what the officers or other witnesses at the scene have also seen.
Okay. And also the driving behavior, that would matter too, right?
Yes, that's also true.
Okay. You were asked very pointedly, and your answer was basically that you do not know what Mr. Vega's BAC was at the time he was driving, only at the time you tested it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. How long, based on your education, how long does it typically take for somebody to absorb alcohol into their system completely?
It usually takes anywhere between 30 to 60 minutes for full absorption on an empty stomach.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I forgot to ask one more question.
Sure.
Ms. Kelly, I'm handing you what have been previously marked as Exhibit 70 and Exhibit 73. I believe you testified that these were the tubes that you received at the lab.
Yes, that's correct.
Did you notice that the birth date so much?
I did make note of that in my documents. I believe. Yes, I did make note.
And what was your note?
I wrote that the Exhibit 001, which is the Grace Doctor one, that one, the birthday was 10/28/79. And then on 002 and 003, I have it as 6/28/78.
Do you know what Mr. Vega's birthday is?
I do not.
Briefly. Ma'am, this is not a product that you generated, but this is something that's already in evidence. It's Exhibit 72. And for the record, I'm flipping to page 52. Okay.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Apologize, man. Give it just a moment to unwrap this folder, so. All right, now, I have flipped to page 52 of what I'm telling you was Mr. Vega's medical records that previously had been that piece. And I'm going to point to this paragraph here, starting with upon arrival to POH. Please read that paragraph aloud.
The paragraph says, upon arrival to POH and checking patient ID band, patient notified RN that DOB was incorrect. Called and notified registration and verified DOB with ID scanned in Epic. DOB updated and new ID bands placed on patient.
Thank you, ma'am. Apologize, Mr. Vega. No further questions, Your Honor.
Are we done, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Take off time. All right, any redraws?
Yes, sir. Ms. Kelly, do you have any personal knowledge of what you just read into the record?
No, that was the first time I saw that document.
Do you have any knowledge of what took place at Erlanger when that blood was drawn?
No, ma'am.
Do you have any knowledge of what took place at Erlanger when Mr. Vega was admitted?
I do not.
Are records important in your line of work?
Yeah, we keep copious notes and records for all of our testing.
Is accuracy important in your line of work?
Yes, I would say that's true.
Do you check and recheck your lab numbers to make sure that your lab numbers on your reports match what is on blood tests?
Yes.
Thank you.
No redraw, or no redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you, Tracy Kelly. General Carter.
Your Honor, state's next witness would be Dr. Stephen Morris.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Cogswell is the local forensic pathologist, coroner, detective, known as. He, testifying probably for some length of time, and he also had an issue where he could not be here late this afternoon. He'll be your next witness starting tomorrow morning. It's a little earlier than we usually let him go. We're going to let him go today. Be sure to abide by the court's admonition not to discuss this, not to expose any information, not research anything. Also, it's coming to mind that tomorrow is Friday. We talked during jury selection about the potential for this to wrap around to next week. That seems to be the case, at least for some parts of this trial. I'm going to ask you sometime tomorrow if you would prefer to come back on Saturday, or if you would prefer to, if we adjourn on Friday, to start again on Monday. I'll have to have that answer now, and let's talk among yourselves, and I'll just ask at some point tomorrow. You can talk about that during the break for sure. Okay, so that next step into the jury room. Oh, sorry, one more thing. Tomorrow is Friday.
little different in this court. We're doing something called arraignment, which adds another 30 minutes to the morning. So instead of being here at 9:15 for 9:30 start, we'll have you come back at 9:45 before 10 a.m. start tomorrow. Okay? All right, so on. Any matters to take up before we adjourn for the day?
I'll for the statement.
Just to state anticipating closing tomorrow. Dr. Cox, your last witness?
Yes, sir.
It is. All right, so
Well, I'm sorry, could you,
is Dr. Cox your last intended witness?
yes, that's correct, Your Honor.
At that point, I don't know the defense ops that have called any proof or not. I understand you may have an expert as well. The parties anticipate finishing tomorrow.